Hi guys, tonight we step quietly into the cold nights of the Middle Ages. The sun has gone down, and the world is painted in shades of grey and deep blue. The air is sharp, and it bites at your nose and your cheeks. You can see your own breath turning into little white clouds that float away in the dark. The ground is hard like iron under your boots, and the frozen mud makes a loud crunching sound with every step you take. It is a deep, heavy cold that feels like it wants to find its way through your clothes and into your very bones. So before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And if you want to let me know where you are listening from and what time it is where you are. I always love seeing those little snapshots of the world. Now dim the lights and let the story begin. You are walking down a narrow path that leads into your village. It is long after the sun has set, and the sky above is a vast, dark ocean. There are stars scattered across it, looking like tiny, sharp pieces of ice. They are beautiful, but they are cold. They do not give any warmth to the world below. You are wrapped in a heavy cloak made of thick, rough wool. The wool is a dark brown color, the same color as the earth in the autumn. It is scratchy against your neck, but it is the only thing keeping the freezing wind away. Underneath your cloak, you wear a long tunic called a cot. It is made of linen, and it has been washed so many times that it feels soft, like an old friend. In your hand, you carry a small light to guide your way. It is a lanthorn. This is a special kind of lantern made from a metal frame with thin, clear pieces of cow horn on the sides. The horn has been shaved so thin that the light from the small candle inside can shine through. It does not give off a bright light, but it gives enough of a soft, yellow glow to show you where the ice is on the path. The flame flickers as you move, making long, dancing shadows on the snow. You have to walk carefully. If you slip and fall, the ice will be unforgiving, and the lantern might go out. The village is very quiet tonight. In the summer, this place is full of life and noise. You would hear the sound of pigs grunting in their pens, the clucking of chickens, and the voices of people calling out to one another across the fields. You would hear the rhythmic sound of a scythe, a long, curved blade used for cutting grass moving through the tall hay. But now, in the heart of winter, everything is hushed. The animals have been tucked away in the warm parts of the houses or in small, low sheds. The people are all inside, huddled close to their fires. As you walk past the houses, you see the smoke rising from the roofs. These houses are small and sturdy. They are made using a way of building called wattle-and-daub. This means the walls are made of woven sticks covered in a thick layer of mud and straw. When the mud dries, it becomes hard and keeps the wind out. The roofs are covered in thick layers of straw called thatch. Right now, the thatch is heavy with a layer of white snow. The smoke coming from the holes in the roofs smells of oak wood and peat. Peat is a special kind of fuel made from dried earth found in wet places. It burns very slowly and has a thick, sweet smell that stays in your clothes. It is a smell that means home and safety. You stop for a moment at the edge of the village green. You stand perfectly still. The silence is so big that you can almost hear the frost forming on the bare branches of the trees. There is no sound of birds. There is no sound of water, because the little stream that runs through the village is frozen solid. It looks like a ribbon of dark glass. This is the time of year that the old people call the hunger gap. It is the hardest part of the winter. New Year has just passed, and the big feasts of Christmas are over. The food that was gathered in the summer and autumn is starting to run low. Every grain of wheat and every piece of dried meat is now more precious than gold. In the Middle Ages, January was the start of a long wait. The ground is too hard to dig, and nothing will grow for many weeks. You must be very clever and very careful to make your food last until the first green plants of spring appear. As you look at the dark shapes of the houses, you think about the families inside. They are sitting in the dim light, talking softly, and thinking about their storage chests. You feel a small shiver, not just from the cold, but from the thought of how long the winter still is. You move your feet again, feeling the straw you stuffed inside your leather boots for warmth. The straw is starting to feel flat and damp, and you can feel the chill of the ground pressing upward. You pass the village church. It is the largest building here, made of grey stone that looks almost blue in the starlight. Its windows are dark, and the heavy wooden door is shut tight against the frost. Even the stone feels like it is huddling together to stay warm. You turn a corner and see your own small cottage. It looks small and humble, but to you, it is a palace of warmth. The walls are thick, and the door is made of heavy oak planks. You can see a tiny sliver of orange light shining through a crack in the door. It is the light of the hearth. The hearth is the stone fireplace in the middle of the room, where the fire never truly goes out. In the winter, the fire is the heart of the house. It gives light, it cooks the food, and it keeps the bitter cold at the door. You reach out and touch the wooden latch of your door. The wood is freezing, and it feels rough under your fingers. Before you go inside, you look back at the village one last time. The snow is falling again, very softly. The flakes are big and white, drifting down like feathers in the dark. They settle on your cloak and on the top of your lanthorn. The world is becoming even whiter and even quieter. You take a deep breath of the cold air, feeling it sting your throat, and then you push the door open. Inside, the air is different. It is thick with the smell of wood smoke, dried herbs, and the salty scent of bacon hanging from the rafters. The transition from the biting frost to the dim warmth of the cottage makes your skin tingle. You step over the threshold and pull the heavy door shut behind you. You drop the wooden bar into place with a solid thud. The wind howls outside, hitting the walls of the house, but it cannot get in. You're safe inside your home, and the long task of surviving the hunger gap is about to begin. You set your lanthorn down on a small wooden stool. The candle inside is low, but you do not need it as much now. The red glow of the embers in the hearth gives the room a soft, flickering light. You move toward the fire, rubbing your hands together. They are red and stiff from the walk. You hold them near the heat, and you feel the warmth slowly returning to your fingers. It is a slow, stinging feeling, but it is good. You look around the room. The shadows are long, and the corners are dark, but this is your world. Every object here has a purpose. Every bag of grain and every jar of beans is a promise that you will see the spring. You take off your heavy, wet cloak and hang it on a wooden peg near the door. You can hear the water dripping onto the floor as the snow melts. You sit down on a bench made of smoothed pine. The house is quiet, except for the occasional pop and crackle of the wood in the fire. You take a moment to just be still. The walk through the village was hard, and the cold was strong, but you are here now. You are part of the night shift of history, the people who kept the world going through the longest, darkest nights. You close your eyes for a second, listening to the wind outside. It sounds like a wild animal, but you are behind thick walls. You are warm. You are safe. And tomorrow, you will begin the work of rationing the food, making sure every bite counts. The heavy wooden bar is now across the door, and the world outside is gone. You stand there for a long moment, leaning your back against the rough oak planks. You can feel the cold of the wood through your tunic, but it is a dying cold. Ahead of you, the room is filled with a soft, orange light. This is your home. It is not big, and it is not fancy, but tonight, it is the safest place in the whole world. The air in here is thick and heavy. It does not move like the wind outside. It is still, and it carries the smell of many things. You can smell the dry straw on the floor, the salty tang of the bacon hanging from the ceiling, and the deep, earthy scent of the wood fire. You take a step forward, and the floor makes a soft, rustling sound. Under your feet, the ground is covered in a thick layer of rushes. These are long, green plants that were gathered from the riverbanks back in the summer, when the sun was hot and the water was low. They have dried now, turning a pale yellow color. You have mixed them with dried herbs like meadow sweets and lavender. Every time you walk across the floor, your boots crush the dry plants, and a tiny bit of their sweet scent rises up into the air. It is a smell that reminds you of the bright days of July, even though the world outside is white and frozen. In the very center of the room is the hearth. It is a large, flat stone set into the floor. This is the most important part of the house. In the Middle Ages, the fire was almost never allowed to go out. If the fire died, it was a very bad sign. It meant a cold night and a hard morning trying to start it again with flint and steel. Right now, the fire is low. It is mostly a pile of glowing red embers, looking like small, hot jewels sitting in a bed of grey ash. You walk over to the wood pile near the wall. You pick up a log of oak. It is heavy and the bark is rough and crinkly. You place it carefully onto the embers. For a moment, nothing happens. Then, a tiny wisp of white smoke curls up. A second later, a small orange flame licks the side of the wood. Then another. Soon, the fire is licking the log, and the room grows a little brighter. The walls of your cottage are thick and strong. They are made of wattle-and-daub, which you remember helping to build. You can see the marks of fingers in the dried mud, where someone smoothed it over the woven branches long ago. The walls are painted with a wash of lime, which makes them look white in the firelight. This helps the small amount of light bounce around the room so you can see better. There are no big windows here. Glass is very expensive, something only the lord in the big stone manor or the monks in the abbey can afford. Your windows are just small slits in the wall, covered with pieces of thin, clear animal skin or wooden shutters. Tonight, the shutters are closed tight and stuffed with wool to keep the drafts out. A draft is what you call a thin stream of cold air that sneaks in through cracks. You look up at the ceiling. There is no chimney in a house like this. Instead, the smoke from the fire rises up into the high, pointed roof. The rafters, the big wooden beams that hold up the roof, are black and shiny. This is because of the smoke. Over many years, the smoke from the fires coated the wood in a layer of soot. This actually helps the house. The soot protects the wood from rotting and keeps bugs away. The smoke finds its way out through a small hole in the thatch, or just seeps through the straw of the roof very slowly. It means the air is always a little bit smoky, but you are used to it. It feels like a warm blanket around you. There is a historical fact about these houses that many people forget. In the winter, the hall, which is this main room, is where everyone lives, eats, and sleeps. Sometimes, if the weather is truly terrible, even the most prized animals, like a young calf or a few shivering hens, might be brought inside to share the warmth. Their body heat helps keep the room warm, and the fire keeps them from freezing. It is a crowded way to live, but it is how people stay alive. You move to the side of the room where your furniture sits. You don't have much. There is a long table made of thick boards sitting on wooden legs. This is called a trestle table. You can take it apart and lean it against the wall if you need more space to work or sleep. Beside it is a bench, smoothed by years of people sitting on it. You run your hand over the wood. It feels silky and warm. There is a large wooden chest in the corner with a heavy lid. This is where you keep your most important things, your extra tunic, a few tools, and the small bags of seeds for next year. You see a specific tool hanging near the fire. It is an iron trammel. This is a clever piece of metal work. It is a long, notched bar with a hook on the end that hangs from a beam above the fire. You can move the hook up or down to change how close your cooking pot is to the flames. If you want the soup to boil fast, you move the pot lower. If you just want it to stay warm, you move it higher. Right now, the trammel is empty, waiting for the morning meal. It hangs there, dark and strong, a silent helper in your daily life. You sit down on the bench and pull off your boots. Your feet feel cold and a bit damp, but as soon as you pull off your thick wool socks, the heat from the fire hits your toes. It is a wonderful feeling. You lean back and look at the shadows dancing on the white walls. The fire makes the room feel alive. The light grows and shrinks, making the shadows of the rafters look like giant fingers stretching across the ceiling. You take a moment of deep silence. You do not move. You do not speak. You just listen. Outside, the wind gives a long, low moan as it rushes past the corner of the house. It sounds angry that it cannot get inside. But in here, everything is still. You can hear the tiny tink-tink sound of the cooling sap in the oak log. You can hear the soft rustle of a mouse somewhere in the thatch of the roof, looking for its own warm place to sleep. This silence is not empty. It is full of the feeling of being protected. It is the silence of a job well done. You have made it through another day of the winter, and you have a roof over your head. You look at the herbs hanging from the beams. There are bunches of dried sage, rosemary, and thyme. They look like dark, upside-down ghosts in the dim light. They are dry and brittle now, but when you crumble them into a pot of boiling water, they will wake up. They will bring the taste of the garden back to your tongue. You think about how much work went into gathering them. You remember the buzzing of bees and the feeling of the hot sun on your neck as you picked them. It seems like a very long time ago. The hunger gap is a time for being quiet and saving your energy. In the summer, you work from the moment the sun comes up until it goes down. You are always moving, always sweating. But in the winter, the nights are long and the days are short. You must learn to move slowly. You must learn to enjoy the warmth of the fire and the safety of the cottage. You reach out and stir the embers with a small iron poker. A cloud of tiny sparks flies up into the dark air of the roof, like a miniature version of the stars you saw outside. They glow for a second and then vanish. You feel your eyes getting heavy. The warmth is making you sleepy. Your body is relaxing, letting go of the tension from the cold walk. The cottage is like a small wooden island in a sea of ice and snow. Everything you need is right here within these four walls. You have your fire, you have your roof, and you have your food stored away in the dark. Tomorrow, you will have to think about rationing. You will have to count your grain and check your jars. But for tonight, the work is done. The fire is burning steadily, and the cold is kept at bay. You are a guardian of this little flame, and as long as it burns, the winter cannot win. You lean your head against the wall, listening to the rhythmic sound of the wind, and you let the peace of the cottage wrap around you like a heavy, warm cloak. You stand up slowly from the bench. Your joints feel a little stiff from the cold walk, but the warmth of the fire is helping. The floorboards creak under your feet as you walk toward the dark corner of the room. Here, away from the dancing light of the hearth, stands the most important thing you own. It is a large, heavy wooden chest. In your time, people call this a hutch. It is made of thick planks of oak wood, held together with heavy iron bands. The wood is dark, stained by years of smoke and the touch of many hands. It is the heart of your survival. You reach out and touch the lid. The wood feels cool and smooth. You can feel the grain of the oak under your fingers, the little ridges and bumps that tell the story of the tree it once was. This chest is not just a piece of furniture. It is where you keep your life. In the Middle Ages, most people do not have many things. You might have a few pots, a tool or two, and the clothes on your back. But the hutch is special. It is often the only thing in the house that has a lock. You reach into a small pouch at your belt and pull out a heavy iron key. It is cold and feels solid in your palm. You slide it into the lock and turn it. The sound of the lock clicking is loud in the quiet room. It is a sharp, metallic clack that echoes off the white walls. You lean forward, grip the edge of the lid, and lift. It is very heavy. You have to use both hands, and you can feel the muscles in your arms working. As the lid swings open, the hinges give a long, low groan. It is a sound you know well. It is the sound of the hutch telling its secrets. As the lid opens, a new smell fills your nose. It is different from the smoke and the herbs by the fire. This is a dry, dusty, earthy smell. It is the smell of the fields in late summer. It is the scent of dried grain, dusty flour, and earthy beans. You lean in closer, and the light from the fire catches the contents of the chest. You see several bags made of coarse, grey linen. They are tied at the top with bits of rough string. You reach in and put your hand on the largest bag. This one is full of rye. Rye is a hardy grain, much stronger than wheat. It can grow in the cold, wet soil of your village when other plants would die. This is what you use to make your bread. In the Middle Ages, bread is the most important food there is. A person might eat 2 or 3 pounds of bread every single day. It is not the soft, white bread you might imagine. It is dark, heavy, and very filling. Sometimes it is so hard you have to dip it in potager, kind of thick vegetable soup, just to make it soft enough to chew. You untie the string on the rye bag and dip your hand inside. The grain feels cool and slippery against your skin. You let the small, hard seeds slide through your fingers, making a soft pattering sound like rain on a roof. You are counting. In your head, you are doing a very important kind of math. You are looking at how much rye is left and thinking about how many weeks there are until the first harvest of the spring. This is the rationing. You cannot eat as much as you want. You can only eat what you need to stay strong enough to work. If you eat too much now, the chest will be empty in March, and March is a long, hungry month. Beside the rye, there are smaller bags. You open one and find dried peas. They are hard and wrinkled, like little green stones. There are also dried beans, brown and speckled. These are very important because they help keep you full when the meat is gone. You do not have much meat, maybe a bit of salted pork or a piece of bacon, but that is saved for special days or for when the work is very hard. Most of your meals come from these bags in the hutch. You reach for a specific tool kept inside the chest. It is a small wooden scoop, carved from a single piece of apple wood. In the language of your time, this kind of wooden bowl or tool is called treen. The word just means of a tree. This scoop is your measuring tool. You know exactly how many scoops of grain are needed to make a loaf of bread that will last 2 days. You hold the scoop in your hand, feeling the weight of it. It is light, but it holds the power of life. Every scoop you take out of this chest must be balanced against the time left in the winter. You look at the level of the grain in the bags. It is lower than it was a month ago. A little ball of worrying sits in your stomach, but you push it away. You have planned well. You gathered as much as the land would give. You worked under the hot sun until your back ached to fill this chest. Now, your job is to be the guardian of what you gathered. You must be clever. You must be careful. You stand there for a moment of reflection, looking into the deep, dark space of the chest. The firelight flickers behind you, throwing your long shadow across the bags of grain. The only sound is the wind outside, still pushing against the walls, and the slow thump-thump of your own heart. In this silence, you feel the weight of the winter. It is a quiet battle. There are no swords or shields here, just a wooden chest and a careful mind. You are the watchman of your own survival. You are the one who decides how much is enough and how much is too much. You notice a bit of dust on the rim of the chest and wipe it away with your thumb. You look for any signs of mice. Mice are the great enemy of the hutch. They can squeeze through the smallest cracks and eat through the linen bags. If a mouse gets in, your food could be ruined. You check the corners carefully. You see the marks where you rub the wood with strong-smelling mint and wormwood. These are herbs that mice do not like. The smell is sharp and clean, cutting through the dusty scent of the grain. It seems your work has kept the chest safe. The historical fact of the matter is that during the hunger gap, a peasant family has to be very smart. They might mix their grain with ground-up acorns or even dried bark if things get very bad. But you are lucky. Your bags are still more than half full. You have done well to make it this far through the winter. You feel a small sense of pride as you look at your store. It represents hundreds of hours of work, plowing the fields, sowing the seeds, weeding the rows, and harvesting the stalks. Every grain in this chest was earned with sweat. You take one last look at the rye, the peas, and the beans. Then, you slowly lower the heavy lid. It closes with a solid, muffled thud that feels very final. You turn the key in the lock, and the clack tells you that your treasure is safe once more. You pull the key out and tuck it back into your pouch. The hutch stays in the shadows, a silent giant holding the promise of the future. You walk back toward the fire. The floorboards creak again, but the sound feels more cheerful now. You know exactly what you have. You know what you must do. The fear of the unknown is gone, replaced by a clear plan. You will take only what you need. You will make the bread thin. You will make the pottage last. And by doing this, you will make it to the spring. You sit back down on your bench and look at the fire. The oak log you put on earlier is now covered in small, glowing cracks. It looks like a map of a golden city. You feel the warmth on your face and the softness of the rushes under your feet. The hutch is locked, the fire is burning, and you are ready for the days ahead. You lean your head back and watch the smoke rise. You are tired, but it is a good kind of tired. It is the tiredness of someone who is prepared. The hunger gap is outside, and it is cold, but inside this cottage, and inside that heavy wooden chest, you have everything you need to win. You turn away from the heavy food chest, your boots making a quiet, crunchy sound on the dried rushes. The fire is burning better now, and the light reaches further up into the high, dark roof. You look up, tilting your head back until you can see the big wooden beams that hold the thatch in place. Hanging from these beams, tied with bits of rough twine, are many small, dark bundles. They look like the dried remains of a summer that has long since passed. These are your herbs. They are the secrets of your kitchen and the medicine for your family. You reach up and stretch your arms. Your fingers brush against a bundle of dried sage. The leaves are grey and fuzzy, feeling like a dusty piece of velvet. Even though they are dry and brittle, as soon as you touch them, they release a tiny bit of their scent. It is a deep, earthy smell that makes you think of roasted meat and heavy stews. In the middle of the hunger gap, when your food is mostly plain grain and water, these herbs are like gold. They bring flavor to the pot. Without them, every meal would taste exactly the same, like wet flour and salt. You pull a small bunch of mint down from its hook. It is very dry, and the leaves crackle like tiny pieces of parchment paper between your fingers. You bring the bundle to your nose and take a deep, slow breath. The smell is sharp and cool. It is the exact opposite of the thick, hot smoke from the fire. For a second, if you close your eyes, you can almost forget about the snow piling up outside the door. You remember the day you picked this mint. It was back in July, during the height of the hay harvest. The sun was a giant, golden ball in the sky, and the air was so thick with heat that you could see it shimmering over the fields. You had walked down to the edge of the stream where the ground was soft and damp. The mint grew there in thick, green patches. The sound of the bees was a constant hum, like a tiny engine in the grass. You had used a small iron knife to cut the stalks, careful not to pull up the roots. You wanted the plant to grow back next year. You filled your basket until the smell was so strong it made your eyes water. Now, in the dark of January, that summer day feels like a dream, but the mint is real. It is a piece of the sun that you have saved for the dark times. A historical fact you know well, that in your time, plants are not just for taste. Every plant is a kind of doctor. People believe that plants have powers to fix the body. If someone has a cough from the damp winter air, you might boil some of these herbs in water to make a tea. If someone has a headache, you might rub the leaves on their forehead. These bundles are your pharmacy. You do not have a doctor in the village, so you must know which leaf cures a stomach ache and which one helps a wound to heal. You move to the next bundle. This one is called pennyroyal. This is your specific micro-history detail for the night. Pennyroyal is a very strong-smelling member of the mint family. You do not use this one for cooking very much because the taste is too powerful. Instead, you use it for the night shift of keeping the house clean. You take a few stalks of the pennyroyal and crumble them onto the floor. The strong, peppery scent fills the air around your feet. This herb is used to keep away the fleas and the tiny biting bugs that like to live in the straw and the wool blankets. In the winter, when the animals might be close by and everyone is huddled together, bugs can be a big problem. The pennyroyal acts like a shield, making the cottage smell too sharp for the tiny pests to stay. You stand very still for a moment of reflection. You hold a bunch of lavender in your hands. You do not move. You do not make a sound. You just stand there in the dim, orange light of the fire, with the smell of the lavender floating around you. It is a soft, sweet scent that makes your heart feel a little lighter. Outside, the wind is screaming, and the ice is thick on the trees. But here, in this small circle of scent, there is peace. You think about how amazing it is that a tiny plant can survive the drying and the smoke and the long months of dark, and still give off such a beautiful smell. It is a small victory over the winter. You look at the other bundles. There is rosemary, which looks like tiny, dried needles from a pine tree. There is thyme, with its tiny, round leaves that are hard to even see in the dark. There is even some mugwort, which people say brings good dreams if you put it under your pillow. You treat these bundles with great respect. You know that if you use too much now, you will have nothing left for the wet, cold days of March. You must ration the flavor, just like you ration the grain. You only take a tiny pinch of sage for the big pot of soup, just enough to make the water taste like something more than just water. You reach up and tie the mint back onto its hook. The string is rough and leaves a little bit of brown fuzz on your fingers. You wipe your hands on your tunic. The smell of the herbs stays on your skin. It is a good smell. It is the smell of a house that is well cared for. Even though you are a peasant and your life is hard, you have these small comforts. You have the knowledge of the earth. You know how to take what grows for free in the woods and the fields and turn it into something that keeps your family healthy and happy. The fire pops, sending a shower of orange sparks up toward the herbs. You watch them go, making sure none of them land on the dry plants. The thatch roof and the dried herbs are very flammable, which means they can catch fire very easily. You must always be careful. You use a long wooden pole to push the bundles a little further away from the path of the smoke. The smoke is good for them in small amounts because it keeps the mold away, but too much heat will turn them to ash. You take one last look at your hanging garden in the roof. It is a strange kind of garden, one that grows downwards instead of upwards. It represents the work of your hands and the memory of the sun. As long as these herbs are hanging here, you have a way to fight the gloom of the hunger gap. You have a way to make the hard, dry bread taste a little bit better. You have a way to keep the air sweet when the door has been shut 4 days on end. You walk back toward the hearth and sit down. The smell of the pennyroyal is still rising from the rushes on the floor, mixing with the scent of the oak logs and the lavender on your hands. It is a complex smell, a heavy and rich smell that belongs only to a medieval home in the winter. You feel a sense of calm. The work of checking the food chest was important, but checking the herbs was a comfort. It reminds you that life is not just about having enough to eat. It is about the little things that make life worth living, like the scent of a summer field in the middle of a frozen night. You lean back against the bench, closing your eyes, and let the different smells tell you stories of the bright days that are waiting for you on the other side of the snow. You turn your attention back to the deep shadows of the food chest. The scent of the herbs is still lingering in the air, but your mind is now on the weight and the count of your survival. You reach down and pull one of the heavy linen bags toward the light of the fire. The fabric is rough and scratchy against your palms. It is made of hemp, a very strong plant fiber that can hold a lot of weight without breaking. These bags have been used for years, and they are covered in small, neat patches where you have sewn up holes made by time or wear. You begin to count. This is a quiet, serious task. In the Middle Ages, your life is measured in bags of grain. You have 3 large bags of rye and 2 smaller bags of what you call maslin. Here is a simple historical fact for you. Maslin is a mix of 2 different grains, usually wheat and rye, grown together in the same field. People do this because if the weather is too wet for the wheat, the rye will still grow. It is a way of making sure you always have something to eat, even if the weather is bad. The bread made from maslin is better than plain rye, but it is still dark and heavy. You lift the first bag of rye. It is heavy, making the muscles in your back pull tight. You can feel the individual grains shifting inside the bag. They make a soft, sliding sound, like the sound of dry leaves being blown across a stone floor. You set it down carefully on the rushes and move to the next. As you work, a fine, pale dust begins to rise from the bags. It is flour dust, and it smells like a dry summer day. It catches the light of the fire, looking like tiny dancing golden motes in the air. You reach into your belt and pull out a small piece of charcoal and a flat, smooth piece of wood. This is your tally stick. You use it to keep track of your food. For every bag you count, you make a small mark on the wood. You are doing the math for the hunger gap. You know that January is long, and February is even longer because the cold seems to settle into the earth and stay there. Then comes March, which is the hardest month of all. You must make these 5 bags last for at least 12 more weeks. You find yourself moving very slowly. Every movement is careful because you do not want to spill even a single grain. If a handful of grain falls into the rushes on the floor, it is lost. It will fall between the stalks and be eaten by the mice or rot in the damp. You treat the grain like it is made of tiny pieces of silver. You check the knots on the top of each bag. They are tied with thrums, which are short pieces of leftover wool from a weaver's loom. The wool is oily and strong, and it keeps the bags shut tight. You come across a smaller, softer bag hidden in the corner of the chest. This is your most special store. You pull it out and open it just a little bit. Inside is fine, white flour. This is not for every day. This flour has been sifted many times to take out the brown bits of the grain, which you call the bran. To do this, you use a specific microhistory tool called a bolting cloth. This is a piece of very thin, see-through linen stretched across a wooden frame. You rub the flour across the cloth, and only the finest, whitest powder falls through. It takes a long time and a lot of work to make just a small amount. This white flour is saved for the end of the winter, or perhaps for a special loaf of bread if someone in the family gets sick and needs something soft to eat. You touch the white flour with the tip of your finger. It feels as soft as silk, or like the fine dust on a butterfly's wing. It is so different from the rough, gritty rye grain. You quickly tie the bag back up. Just seeing it there makes you feel a little bit richer. It is a small comfort to know that even in the middle of the starving time, you have something fine and pure hidden away. Now you stop. You sit back on your heels on the floor. You let your hands rest on the heavy bags of grain. This is a moment of deep, atmospheric silence. You do not move. You do not think about the work or the cold. You just feel the stillness of the cottage. The fire has settled into a steady, quiet glow. The wind outside has died down for a moment, leaving the world in a heavy, frozen hush. You can hear the very faint sound of the house breathing, the little creaks of the timber as it calls, the rustle of the thatch roof. You feel the weight of the grain bags against your knees. In this silence, you feel a deep connection to the earth. You realize that everything you are and everything you will be depends on these bags. It is a big thought, and it makes the room feel very small and very safe. You take a deep breath, and the flour dust tickles your nose. You sneeze softly, and the sound seems to echo in the rafters. You get back to work. You move the bags around so that the oldest grain is at the top. This is part of being a good watchman. You must use what was gathered first, so that nothing goes bad. You look at the floor of the chest, checking for any signs of dampness. If the wood gets wet, the grain will grow a green mold that can make people very sick. But the wood is dry and seasoned. You have lined the bottom of the chest with dry ferns to keep the bags off the floor. You think about the miller in the village. You remember taking this grain to him back in the autumn. You remember the giant stone wheels of the mill turning with a heavy thrum-thrum sound that you could feel in your feet. The miller took his mulcha, that is the portion of grain he keeps, as payment for grinding the rest into flour. It always felt like a lot to give away, but without his big stones, you would have to spend all day every day grinding the grain by hand with a small stone called a quern. That is a back-breaking job that no one wants to do in the winter. You finish your count. The marks on your tally stick tell you that you have enough, as long as you are very careful. You will not have full bellies every night, but you will not starve. This knowledge is like a warm fire in your chest. It allows you to relax your shoulders. You lean your head against the side of the wooden hutch for a second. The wood is cool against your forehead. You think about the people who will eat this bread, the people you love, the people who work alongside you in the fields. You are the one who keeps the count. You are the one who ensures that there is still bread on the table when the snow is melting in March. You carefully lift the bags back into their proper places. You stack them neatly, one on top of the other. You make sure the white flour is tucked safely in the middle, where it is most protected. You run your hand over the linen one last time. It feels solid and real. This is not a dream of food. It is the food itself. You stand up, your knees making a small popping sound. You look at your tally stick, and then tuck it into the waistband of your trousers. The task of the count is finished. You have looked the hunger gap in the face, and you have a plan. You feel a sense of order and peace. The darkness of the chest no longer feels scary. It feels like a larder, a place of plenty. You walk back toward the fire, leaving the bags in their dark, quiet home. The firelight welcomes you back, casting your shadow long and thin against the wall. You sit on the bench and look at your hands. They are dusty with the life-giving powder of the grain. You rub them together, watching the dust fall into the fire, where it flares up in tiny, bright sparks. You are ready for the next day. You are ready for the rest of the winter. You sit back down on your small wooden stool near the hearth. The grain is safe in its chest, and the herbs are hanging high in the rafters. Now, your eyes fix on the fire itself. It is the only light in the room, and it is the only thing keeping the freezing breath of winter from coming through the walls. You lean forward and pick up a small tool made of dark, heavy iron. This is your poker. It is just a long, thin bar of metal with a small curve at the end. You use it to stir the fuel, making sure the air can get to the heat so the fire does not die. You look at the fuel you are burning. It is not just wood. While you have a few logs of oak and ash saved for the coldest nights, most of what you burn is peat. You reach over to the small pile beside the hearth and pick up a piece. It feels light in your hand, but it is very dry. It looks like a thick, dark brown brick made of tightly packed earth and old bits of grass. This is peat. In the Middle Ages, peat is a very important fuel for people like you. It comes from the wet, marshy lands near the village called bogs. Here is a simple historical fact about your life. You have something called turbary rights. This sounds like a big word, but it just means the law allows you to go to the village bog and dig up your own fuel. You do not have to pay the lord of the manor for it, as long as you only take what you need for your own fire. This is a very big deal. Without these rights, you would have to spend your precious pennies on wood, or you would have to go into the deep forest, which can be a dangerous place in the winter. You remember the work of getting this peat ready. It was done back in the late spring, when the ground was finally starting to wake up. You went down to the bog with a special tool called a peat spade. It has a long handle and a blade that is bent at a sharp angle. You pushed the blade into the soft, wet earth and pulled out long, heavy blocks of black mud. At first, the peat is so wet you can squeeze water out of it like a sponge. You had to stack the blocks in little towers, like small stone houses, so the wind could blow through them. The summer sun baked them until they turned hard and light. Then, you loaded them onto a wooden cart and brought them home. Now, those blocks of dried earth are what keep you alive. You place a new block of peat onto the fire. You do not just throw it on. You place it carefully onto the metal stands that hold the fuel up. These stands are called Ambiance, but many people in the village just call them fire dogs. This is your specific micro-history detail for this part of the night. An andiron is a pair of iron bars that sit on the hearthstone. They have little legs and often have a decorative top that looks like the head of a dog or a simple round ball. By resting the peat on these iron dogs, you keep the fuel off the flat stone. This allows the air to flow underneath the fire, which helps the peat burn better and more evenly. Without the fire dogs, the fire might get choked by its own ash and go out. As the new block of peat catches the heat, a thick, blue-grey smoke begins to rise. It doesn't rise fast like the smoke from a pine log. Instead, it curls and twists slowly, like a lazy snake waking up in the sun. The smell of burning peat is very special. It is not sharp or resinous like wood. It is heavy, sweet, and very earthy. It is the smell of the deep ground, of things that lived and died hundreds of years ago, now giving their heat back to the world. To you, this smell means comfort. It is the smell of a warm house and a full belly. Even if the belly is only full of simple rye bread, you watch the smoke as it floats upward. It moves through the dim light, catching the orange glow of the embers. You follow it with your eyes as it reaches the high, dark rafters. It wraps around the hanging herbs and the salted meat, giving them a little more flavor and keeping the bugs away. You feel a sense of peace as you watch the slow, rhythmic movement of the smoke. Now, take a moment of reflection. Do not move. Do not speak. Just watch the fire. The room is very dark, except for the small circle of light around the hearth. You can feel the heat on your shins and the palms of your hands. The rest of your body is in the shadows, but your front is glowing. The only sound is the very soft hiss of the peat as the last bit of moisture escapes. It is a tiny, gentle sound, like a secret being whispered. In this silence, You realize that this fire is a living thing. It needs to be fed, it needs to breathe, and it needs to be watched. You are the guardian of this light. As long as the peat glows, the darkness of the winter stays outside. You feel very small in the big, cold world, but here, by your fire, you are powerful. The smoke is thick tonight because the air is so cold. The cold air outside pushes down on the house, making the smoke stay a bit lower than usual. You see the smoke line in the room. This is the place where the clear air near the floor meets the smoky air near the ceiling. In a medieval house, you learn to live below the smoke. You sit on low stools and sleep on low beds of straw. The air near the floor is always the freshest. You watch a stray puff of smoke drift down and then get pulled back up by the heat. It is like a dance that never ends. You use your iron poker to push a few glowing embers closer to the new peat block. The embers are a beautiful color. They are a deep, pulsing red, like the heart of a giant bird. When you blow on them gently, they turn a bright, angry orange for a second before settling back into their red glow. This is how you ration your fuel. You do not want a big, roaring fire that burns everything up in an hour. You want a slow, steady simmer of heat. You want the peat to glow and smolder for as long as possible. If you are clever, 2 or 3 blocks of peat can last you the whole evening. You think about the night shift of the fire. Even when you go to sleep, the fire must keep working. Before you go to bed, you will do something called banking the fire. You will use your poker and a small shovel to cover the glowing embers with a thick layer of grey ash. This hides the fire from the air. Underneath the ash, the embers will stay hot and alive all through the night, like a secret heart beating in the dark. In the morning, you will pull back the ash, add a bit of dry kindling, and the fire will wake up again. You look at your hands in the firelight. They are stained with the dark dust of the peat. You rub them together, and the dust falls away. You feel the warmth soaking deep into your skin, making your muscles feel heavy and relaxed. The hunger gap is a time of waiting, and the fire is your companion in that wait. It doesn't ask for much, just a little bit of earth and a little bit of your time. In return, it gives you everything. It gives you the power to cook, the power to see, and the power to stay warm when the world is turning to ice. You lean back slightly, resting your elbows on your knees. The smoke continues its slow climb toward the roof. The smell of the bog and the earth fills your lungs, and it feels like you are breathing in the very spirit of the land. You are safe. You are warm. The peat is burning exactly as it should, and the andirons are holding it steady. You have done your job as the watchman of the hearth. For now, there is nothing to do but watch the flames and let the warmth guide you toward sleep. The night is long, and the winter is hard, but you have the fire, and that is enough. You look down at your feet, which are now bare and warming up by the soft glow of the peat fire. Beside you on the floor sit your boots. They look tired. They are made of thick, dark brown cow leather that has been rubbed with animal fat many times to keep the water out. But the winter is a cruel thief. The sharp ice on the paths and the frozen mud have scratched the surface, and you can see a small gap where the bottom of the shoe is starting to pull away from the top. In the Middle Ages, having bad shoes is not just a little problem. If your feet get wet and stay cold, you can get sick very easily. Taking care of your boots is just as important as taking care of your food. You reach down and pick up one of the boots. It feels heavy and stiff. You use a small, dry piece of wood to scrape away the dried mud from the bottom. The mud falls onto the rushes with a tiny tick-tick sound. As you clean it, you think about all the places these boots have taken you. They have walked through the high grass of the hay fields. They have stood in the cold water of the stream, and they have climbed the hill to the Lord's manor. Now, they need your help so they can keep going. You reach for a small leather pouch that you keep tucked near the hearth. Inside are your tools for fixing things. You pull out a specific micro-history tool called an awl. It is a very simple tool, but it is very clever. It is a short, sharp spike made of iron with a handle made from a piece of deer antler. Because leather is very tough and thick, you cannot just push a needle through it with your fingers. You must use the awl to poke a hole first. The iron spike is polished and shiny from use, and the antler handle feels smooth and warm in your palm. Beside the awl, you pull out a long piece of linen thread. This thread is not like the thin stuff used for sewing a shirt. It is thick and strong, made by twisting many strands of flax together. To make it even stronger, you take a small lump of beeswax and rub it up and down the thread. The wax makes the thread look yellow and shiny. It also does two important things. It helps the thread slide through the leather holes more easily, and it plugs up the holes so water cannot get inside. This is called shoemaker's wax. It smells like a beehive on a summer afternoon, sweet and clean. Here is a simple historical fact about your boots. They are what people call turn shoes. This is a very interesting way of making footwear. To make a turn shoe, the leather is sewn together inside out. It is much easier to sew the seams when they are on the outside. Then, when the sewing is finished, the whole shoe is soaked in water to make the leather soft. While it is still wet, the shoemaker turns the shoe right side out, so all the stitches and the messy edges are hidden on the inside. This protects the thread from wearing out against the ground. It is a clever way to make a shoe last for a long time. You begin your work. You hold the boot between your knees and use the awl to poke a hole through the thick sole. It takes a lot of strength. You have to push hard, and you can hear the leather pop as the sharp iron point goes through. Then, you pull the awl out and quickly push the wax thread through the hole before the leather closes back up. Your fingers are strong and calloused, which means the skin is thick and tough from years of hard work. This is good, because the thread can sometimes cut into your skin if you're not careful. The work is slow and rhythmic. Push, pop, pull, thread. You move along the edge of the boot, one stitch at a time. Each stitch is small and neat. You want the repair to be as strong as the original leather. You are not in a hurry. In the winter nights, time is the one thing you have plenty of. The firelight makes the shadows of your hands look like giant birds moving on the wall. You watch the thread disappear into the leather, feeling a sense of satisfaction as the gap in the boot begins to close. Now, take a long moment of reflection. Stop your work for a second. Hold the boot in your hands and just look at it in the dim, orange light. Do not speak. Do not move. Just feel the weight of the object. This boot is a map of your life. Every scratch and every dark stain is a memory of a day spent working the land. In this silence, you can hear the fire breathing and the wind outside whispering to the trees. You realize how much you depend on these simple things. Without this bit of cowhide and this piece of string, you would be trapped inside your house. These boots are your freedom. They allow you to be the watchman of the night. You feel a deep respect for the leather and the tools. They are your partners in survival. You finish the last stitch and tie a heavy knot in the thread. You pull it tight, making sure it will not come loose. Then, you take a small piece of animal fat, usually from a pig, and rub it all over the repair. The fat is white and greasy. As you rub it in, the leather turns a darker, richer color. The fat will help keep the dampness out when you step into the slushy snow tomorrow morning. You can smell the salty, heavy scent of the grease mixing with the sweet smell of the beeswax. You pick up the other boot and check it over. It doesn't have a hole, but the leather looks dry. If leather gets too dry, it will crack and break. You spend the next hour rubbing fat into both boots, using your thumb to work it deep into the grain of the hide. Your hands become shiny and slippery. The leather seems to drink up the oil, becoming soft and flexible again. You hold them up to the firelight. They look almost new, or at least as new as an old pair of boots can look. They are ready for the path again. You set the boots down carefully near the hearth, but not too close. If they get too hot, the leather will shrink and become brittle. They need to sit in the gentle warmth where the oil can settle into the skin overnight. You wipe your greasy hands on a scrap of old linen. Your fingers feel warm and limber from the work. It is a good feeling to fix something with your own hands. It makes you feel like you are in control of your world, even when the winter is trying its best to take that control away. You lean back against the wall, stretching your legs out toward the fire. The hunger gap is a time for mending. When you cannot work in the fields, you work in the house. You fix the boots, you fix the clothes, and you fix the tools. This way, when the spring finally comes and the ground softens, you will be ready to hit the earth running. You won't have to stop because of a broken strap or a hole in your shoe. You are preparing for the future, one stitch at a time. The room is very quiet now. The peat fire has burned down a little, and the shadows are creeping closer to the hearth. You look at your boots sitting there in the firelight. They look like two loyal dogs waiting for their master. You feel a sense of peace. The food is counted, the fire is fed, and the boots are mended. You have done your duty for the day. You are the watchman of the small things, and tonight, the small things are all in order. You close your eyes for a moment, letting the warmth of the cottage and the smell of the beeswax carry you toward a deep, restful sleep. The winter is still outside, but inside, you have everything you need to keep moving forward. You sit very still on your wooden bench, resting your back against the whitewashed wall. The fire is glowing, and your boots are resting near the warmth, but your ears are fixed on a sound coming from outside. It started as a low hum, like a distant bee, but now it has grown into a deep, heavy roar. It is the winter wind. In the Middle Ages, the wind is not just moving air. It feels like a living thing, a giant force that travels across the flat, frozen fields and slams against the side of your cottage. You can hear it rushing through the bare branches of the old oak tree outside, making the wood creak and groan like a tired person. The sound is big and lonely. It comes from the north, across the sea and the high hills, bringing the breath of the ice with it. You listen to it hit the roof. The thatch, the thick layers of dried straw that keep you dry rustles and shakes. You can hear the individual stalks of straw rubbing against each other, a dry, whispering sound that tells you how hard the wind is pushing. It sounds like the house is trying to hold its breath. You feel a tiny shiver, and you pull your wool tunic tighter around your chest. Even though you are inside, the wind has a way of making itself known. You stand up and walk toward the small window in the wall. As you move away from the fire, the air feels much thinner and colder. By the time you reach the wall, you can feel the chill coming off the stones. Your window is not made of glass. As you know, glass is a rare and beautiful thing that only the very rich can own. For you, the window is just a small, rectangular hole cut into the thick wall. Right now, it is closed tight with a heavy wooden shutter made of oak. The shutter is held in place by a thick wooden bar that sits into iron loops. You put your hand near the edge of the shutter. Here is where you feel the draft. A draft is a thin, sharp stream of cold air that finds its way through the tiny cracks between the wood and the wall. It feels like a needle of ice touching your skin. You can hear the wind whistling as it tries to squeeze through that small space. It is a high, thin sound, like a flute played by a ghost. This leads us to a simple historical fact about your home. In the winter, medieval people spend a lot of time stopping the gaps. Because your house is made of natural things like wood and mud, it is always moving. The cold makes the wood shrink, and the wind finds the new holes. You must be the watchman of these gaps, or the heat from your precious peat fire will simply fly away into the night. You reach into a small basket near the window. Inside is a pile of flock. This is your specific micro-history detail for this part of the night. Flock is the name for the messy bits of wool that are left over after sheep have been sheared and the wool has been cleaned. It is too short and knotty to be spun into fine thread for a shirt, so it is used for other things. It is thick, oily, and very springy. You take a handful of the grey wool and begin to poke it into the crack around the window shutter. You use a small, flat piece of wood to push the wool deep into the gap. As you work, the high whistling sound of the wind starts to fade. The oily wool blocks the air and traps the warmth inside. It feels good to do this. Every bit of wool you push into the wall is a victory. You are building a shield against the winter. You can feel the grease from the wool on your fingers. It smells like a wet sheep, a heavy and wild smell that reminds you of the spring days out in the pasture. You don't mind the smell. In the hunger gap, the smell of animals is a good smell. It means life and it means warmth. You finish plugging the holes around the shutter and then move down to the bottom of the door. You do the same thing there, stuffing the flock into the space where the oak door meets the stone threshold. The room feels a little bit quieter now. The wind is still roaring outside, but it sounds further away. It is no longer a sharp whistle. It is just a dull, heavy thudding against the house. You have successfully closed the world out. Now, take a long moment of reflection. Stay there, kneeling by the door. Do not move. Do not make a sound. Just listen. In this silence, you can hear the difference between the outside and the inside. Outside, there is chaos. There is the freezing wind, the drifting snow, and the dark, empty fields where nothing can grow. But inside, just a few inches away on the other side of the wood, there is stillness. You can hear the slow, rhythmic thump of the wind hitting the door, like a giant heart beating against the house. In this silence, you realize how small your world has become. It is just these four walls, this roof, and this fire. And yet, this small world is enough. You feel a deep sense of safety. You are like a bird in a nest or a rabbit in a hole. The winter can howl all it wants, but it cannot get to you. You stand up and walk back to the fire. Your feet feel the warmth of the rushes again. You look at the candle sitting on the table. The flame is steady now. Before you fix the window, the flame was dancing and flickering in the draught. Now, it stands tall and yellow, a straight line of light in the dark room. This is the sign of a well-sealed house. A steady flame means a safe home. You think about the people out on the night shift who do not have a thick wall to protect them. You think about the shepherds who might be staying in small stone huts on the hills to watch over the hardiest sheep. They only have a small fire and a thick cloak to keep the wind away. You feel a moment of pity for them, but also a sense of shared strength. You are all part of the same story. You are all waiting out the storm. The wind gives one more giant roar, and you hear a piece of ice hit the shutter with a loud crack. It sounds like a stone being thrown, but it is just the winter showing its teeth. You don't jump. You just look toward the window and smile a little bit. You know that the oak is strong and the wool is tight. You have done your work well. The sound of the wind, which felt scary an hour ago, now feels like a song that is lulling you to sleep. It is a reminder that you are warm and the world is cold, and there is no better feeling than that. You sit back down on your bench and pick up a small piece of bread. It is hard, and you have to chew it slowly, letting the saliva soften the rye. As you eat, you watch the smoke from the fire. It rises straight up now, no longer being pushed around by the wind. The cottage has become a calm pool of air in the middle of a great, rushing river of cold. You lean your head back against the wall and close your eyes. The sound of the wind is still there, a constant whoosh in the background, but your mind is drifting. You are thinking of the thick wool, the heavy door, and the deep, silent snow that is burying the paths outside. You are the watchman of the wind, and tonight you have won. The storm will continue until the sun comes up, but you are safe in the heart of your home, and that is all that matters. You reach for the small wooden cupboard that sits on the wall near the hearth. In your time, this is called a bread safe. It has small holes carved into the front in the shape of stars and circles to let the air move through, but the holes are small enough to keep the flies and the mice away. You open the door, and the hinges give a tiny, dry squeak. Inside, there is a single loaf of bread. This is not like the soft, fluffy white bread you might find in a big city or at a lord's table. This is a loaf of black bread, made from a mix of rye and a little bit of barley. It is round and heavy, shaped like a large, flat stone you might find in a river. You take the loaf out and set it on the trestle table. It feels as hard as a piece of wood. In the Middle Ages, bread is baked in big batches because the village oven is only heated once or twice a week. Everyone brings their dough to the baker, and once the loaves are done, they have to last a long time. This loaf was baked 5 days ago. Because of the cold, dry air, it has become very tough. You can rap your knuckles against the crust, and it makes a solid thump sound. It is so hard that if you dropped it on the floor, it might not even break. Here is a simple historical fact for you. Bread is the most important part of your life. It is more than just food. It is almost like a member of the family. You never waste a single crumb. If a piece of bread falls on the floor, you pick it up, brush it off, and say a small prayer of thanks before eating it. To waste bread is to invite the hunger gap to become a permanent guest in your house. Because it is so precious, you have a special way of cutting it to make sure everyone gets exactly the same amount. You reach for your knife. It is a simple tool with a blade made of dark iron and a handle made of smoothed bone. You have spent a long time sharpening the edge on a flat stone today, so it is as sharp as a razor. You place the edge of the knife against the side of the loaf. You have to push down with all your weight, using the palm of your hand to press on the back of the blade. You can hear the crust begin to complain. It makes a loud crackle and crunch as the iron bites into the hard, baked surface. You are preparing a specific micro-history detail called a trencher. A trencher is a thick slice of stale bread that you use as a plate. In your cottage, you do not have many wooden bowls, and you certainly do not have plates made of clay or metal. Instead, you cut a slice of this hard bread about an inch thick. You smooth it out as best you can. Tonight, you will put your stew or your piece of salted meat right on top of this bread. The bread is so dry that it acts like a sponge. It soaks up all the juices and the fats from the food. By the time you finish your meal, the trencher has become soft and full of flavor. Then, you eat the plate itself. Nothing is thrown away. It is the cleverest way to eat that has ever been invented. As you cut the second slice, the smell of the rye rises up to meet you. It is a sour, deep smell. It doesn't smell like a cake. It smells like the earth. Rye bread has a special tang to it because the dough is allowed to sit and sour for a day before it is baked. This helps it stay good to eat for longer. You see the tiny flecks of bran outer shell of the grain in the dark grey middle of the loaf. It is a humble food, but it is strong food. It gives you the energy to chop wood and carry water through the snow. Now, take a long moment of reflection. Put the knife down for a second and just look at the slice of bread sitting on the table. Do not move. Do not speak. Just listen to the silence of the room. The only sound is the very faint hiss of the fire and the distant, muffled roar of the wind. In this stillness, the bread looks like a treasure. You think about how many months of work went into this one slice. You think about the ploughing in the rain, the sowing of the seeds in the mud, the weeding under the hot sun, and the threshing hitting the stalks with a wooden stick to get the grain out. All of that work, all of that sweat, is held right there in your hand. In this moment, you feel a deep respect for the grain. It is a small, quiet miracle that keeps the world turning. You pick up the knife again and finish cutting the slices. You move slowly, making sure the slices are even. If one is too thin, it might break when the hot pottage is poured on it. If it is too thick, there won't be enough bread left for tomorrow. You are a watchman of the loaf. You are measuring your survival in inches and ounces. You feel the grit of the flour on the table under your fingers. It is a rough, honest feeling. The firelight catches the edge of the iron blade as you work. The room is dim, but the table is right near the hearth, so you can see the grain of the wood and the texture of the bread clearly. You notice a few crumbs have fallen onto the table. You carefully sweep them into a pile with your hand and pop them into your mouth. They are crunchy and taste of salt and smoke. Even these tiny bits are important. In the hunger gap, you learn that many small things make a big thing. 10 crumbs make a mouthful, and 10 mouthfuls make a meal. You stack the trenchers neatly. They look like little square blocks of stone. You will keep them near the fire for a few minutes to warm them up. Cold bread is hard on the teeth, but warm bread starts to release its hidden sweetness. You can see a little bit of steam rising from the loaf now that it has been cut open. It is a very small amount, just a ghost of the heat from the oven 5 days ago, but it smells wonderful. You think about the communal oven in the middle of the village. It is a giant dome made of clay and stone. You remember the heat coming off it, so strong that it turned your face red. You remember the smell of 40 loaves baking all at once, a smell that filled the whole street and made everyone's stomach growl. That smell is the smell of a village working together. No one has their own oven because it takes too much wood to heat it up. By sharing the big oven, everyone saves fuel. It is one of the many ways you survive by helping each other. You put the rest of the loaf back into the bread safe and close the door. The clack of the latch sounds like a final note. That bread is for tomorrow and the day after. You have done your duty for tonight's meal. You look at the trenchers, ready and waiting on the table. They are simple, they are hard, and they are dark, but they are yours. You have earned them with your hands and your patience. You feel a sense of pride as you go back to the fire. The hunger gap is trying to make you weak, but this bread is going to make you strong. You sit down, watching the firelight dance on the crust of your trenchers, and you wait for the pot to boil. The night is cold, but the bread is ready, and that is a very good thing. You turn your attention back to the hearth, where the iron pot is hanging from the trammel. This pot is heavy and black, covered in a thick layer of soot from 1,000 fires. In your village, this meal is called pottage. It is the most common thing you eat. It is not a fancy soup with clear broth. It is a thick, slow-cooked stew that stays on the fire almost all day. As you move the pot a little closer to the glowing peat, the liquid inside begins to bubble. A soft, rhythmic glub-glub sound fills the small room. It is a comforting sound, the sound of a meal being born from water and hard work. You reach for a wooden spoon that is tucked into a crack in the wall. The spoon is large and deep, carved from a piece of pale beechwood. You give the pottage a slow stir. As the spoon moves through the liquid, it hits against the ingredients. You are not using much tonight. You have added some dried leeks, a handful of those hard grey peas from your food chest, and a few small onions that were stored in the cool earth under the floor. There is no meat in the pot today. Meat is a luxury, saved for Sundays or feast days. Most of the time, your strength comes from the pot herbs and the grain. Here is a simple historical fact about your pottage. It is never truly finished. Some people call it the perpetual soup. This means that when you eat a bowl of it, you do not empty the pot. Instead, you leave a little bit at the bottom and add more water and more vegetables the next day. The pot stays over the fire, never getting cold. This way, the flavors of the older vegetables mix with the new ones, making the soup taste deep and rich. It is a very clever way to make sure there is always something warm to eat, even if you are busy working in the fields or fixing the roof. You pick up a small wooden bowl and hold it near the pot. You used a heavy spoon to lift a mound of the thick stew. You see the specific micro-history detail of your meal, the frumenty. Frumenty is a special kind of thick porridge made from cracked wheat boiled in milk or water until it becomes very soft and chewy. You have added a scoop of this to your pottage to make it thicker. It looks like small, pale pearls floating in the dark broth. The wheat gives the soup a nutty smell and the texture that makes you feel like you are eating something substantial. It is the part of the meal that fills the hole in your stomach and keeps the hunger away until morning. As you pour the pottage onto the bread trencher you cut earlier, the steam rises in a great, white cloud. It hits your face and feels like a warm, wet blanket. The smell is wonderful. It smells of onions, earthy peas, and the sweet scent of the grain. You take a deep breath, and for a moment, the cold of the winter feels very far away. The hot liquid begins to soak into the hard rye bread, making it heavy and soft. You can see the dark crust of the bread getting darker as it drinks up the soup. Now, take a long moment of reflection. Sit there with the warm bowl in your hands. Do not eat yet. Do not move. Just feel the heat of the wood through the bowl and into your palms. In this silence, the steam curls upward, disappearing into the smoky rafters. You can hear the wind outside again, but it sounds different now. It sounds like it is complaining, because it is out there in the dark, while you are here with a hot meal. In this moment, you realize that this simple bowl of pottage is a great victory. It is the result of your planning, your storage, and your fire. You are the watchman of the pot, and you have provided for yourself. You feel a deep sense of gratitude for the simple things. You take your first bite. The pottage is hot, almost burning your tongue, but it feels good. The onions have cooked until they are sweet and slippery. The peas are soft, and the frumenty gives a nice chew to every mouthful. It is a slow meal. You cannot rush pottage. You have to blow on every spoonful to cool it down, and you have to chew the grain carefully. As you eat, the warmth spreads from your stomach out to your fingers and toes. The shivering you felt earlier stops completely. Your body feels heavy and content. You think about the garden where these onions grew. You remember the spring rain and the way the green shoots pushed through the dark soil. You remember the summer sun that made the leeks grow tall and strong. Every vegetable in this pot is a memory of a different time of year. By eating them now, you're bringing the summer into the winter. It is a way of keeping the cycle of life going, even when the world outside looks dead and frozen. The fire pops, and a single spark lands on the hard stone near your feet. You watch it fade from bright orange to cold grey. You take a piece of the softened bread trencher and tear it off. It is full of the juices of the stew, and it tastes better than any cake. The rye has a sharp, sour taste that cuts through the sweetness of the onions. It is a perfect balance. You move the pot a little further away from the flame using the trammel. You don't want it to boil away. You just want it to stay warm for later. You finish your meal, scraping every last bit of the softened bread from the wooden bowl. You don't leave anything. In the hunger gap, a clean bowl is the sign of a person who understands the value of food. You feel a sense of peace and fullness. The night shift of surviving is easier when your belly is warm. You look at the empty bowl and then at the glowing fire. The light is soft and dim, making the room feel smaller and more private. You sit back on your bench, letting your hands rest on your stomach. The heat of the fire and the heat of the meal are working together to make you very sleepy. You watch the last of the steam vanish into the air. The work of the day is truly over now. You have fed the fire, mended the boots, and fed yourself. You are ready for the long hours of darkness that lie ahead. The winter is still out there, white and silent under the stars, but inside this cottage, the perpetual soup is still warm, and you are safe and satisfied. You stand up from the bench, your body feeling heavy and warm from the pottage. You move toward the door, not to go out, but to look through the small slit beside the frame. You pull back a heavy woolen curtain that hangs there to stop the wind. The air near the wall is much colder, and you can feel the frost on the stones. You peer out into the night. The moon is high and pale, throwing a cold, silvery light over the world. Your garden, which was so green and busy in the summer, is now completely hidden under a deep, white blanket of snow. The snow is thick and smooth, like a clean sheet of linen spread across the earth. It hides the bumps of the rows and the edges of the paths. You can only see the tall, skeletal stalks of the kale plants sticking out, looking like strange, dark fingers reaching up from the ground. In the Middle Ages, the garden is not for flowers. It is a taft. A taft is the small piece of land that comes with your cottage. It is your lifeline. It is where you grow the leeks, the onions, and the herbs that keep you healthy. Right now, it looks dead, but you know better. Here is a simple historical fact about the winter garden. The snow is actually a friend to the plants. It acts like a thick, white blanket that keeps the ground from freezing to deep. Underneath that snow, the roots of the garlic and the winter onions are tucked away, sleeping and safe from the biting wind. If the snow were to melt and the bare ground were hit by a hard frost, the plants might die. But as long as the snow stays, the garden is protected. You are looking at a field of sleeping life, waiting for the first touch of the spring sun to wake it up. You see a specific micro-history detail at the edge of the garden, the quickset hedge. This is a fence made of living hawthorn bushes that have been twisted and woven together over many years. In the summer, it is thick with white flowers and green leaves, but now it is a wall of sharp, grey thorns and dark wood. The snow has piled up against it, forming a long, white drift. The hedge is important because it keeps the deer and the hungry rabbits away from the few plants that might still be edible. It also breaks the force of the wind, creating a little pocket of still air around your house. You stand there, looking out at the white world. The silence is immense. There are no birds singing, no insects buzzing, and no sound of people. It is a world of marble and ice. You can see the dark line of the forest in the distance, looking like a low, black cloud on the horizon. Everything is still. It feels like the world has stopped breathing, holding its breath until the hunger gap is over. You feel very small looking out at this vastness. Your cottage is just a tiny spark of warmth in a huge, frozen ocean. Now, take a long moment of reflection. Do not move. Do not even blink. Just look at the moonlight on the snow. The light is so bright that it makes the shadows look like ink. You can see the tiny sparkles on the surface of the crusty snow, like millions of diamonds scattered on the ground. In this silence, you feel the great power of the winter. It is a quiet power, but it is stronger than any king. You realize that you are a guest in this season. You are the watchman of the garden, but the garden belongs to the frost right now. You feel a deep sense of humbleness and peace. You notice a set of tiny tracks crossing the snow near the hedge. They are small, four-pointed prints, likely from a fox or a hungry hare looking for a bit of bark to chew on. These tracks are the only sign that life is still moving out there in the dark. You feel a sudden warmth for the little creature that made them. You are both doing the same thing, trying to find a way to make it to the morning. The tracks lead toward the woods and then disappear into the shadows. You think about the night shift of the soil. Even though you cannot see it, things are happening under that snow. The earth is resting, gaining back its strength after a long summer of growing. The fallen leaves and the old stalks are slowly turning back into rich, black dirt. This is the time of the great rest. Without this cold and this quiet, the spring would not be as bright or as green. You are part of this rest. Your body is slowing down, your heart is beating a little slower, and your mind is calm. The cold starts to seep through the wool curtain, touching your hands. You shiver once and pull the fabric shut. The white world vanishes, replaced by the warm, dim light of your room. You turn back to the fire, feeling the heat rush to meet you. It feels like a hug. You walk back to the center of the room, your boots crunching softly on the rushes. The garden is safe under its blanket, and the hedge is standing guard. There is nothing more for you to do out there. You sit down and rub your arms to bring back the warmth. You think about the seeds you have saved in a small leather bag near the food chest. They are the promise of next year's garden. In a few months, you will dig into that white snow, find the dark earth beneath, and start the cycle all over again. You will plant the leeks and the beans, and the tuft will be green once more. But for now, the wait is enough. The hunger gap is not just a time of hunger, it is a time of faith. You have to believe that the sun will return and the snow will melt. You have to believe that the tiny seeds will know how to grow. Looking out at the garden reminds you that you are part of something very old and very big. You are the guardian of the ground, and your job is to be patient. You lean your head back, the image of the moonlit snow still bright in your mind, and you let the warmth of the cottage settle deep into your bones. The night is halfway through, and the garden is sleeping, and so, soon, will you. You move away from the door, the chill of the garden still clinging to the edges of your tunic. The fire is now a deep, pulsing red, casting a warm glow that barely reaches the far corners of the room. It is time to seek the ultimate comfort of the winter night. You walk toward your bed, which sits in a quiet nook away from the drafts of the door. This is not a bed made of soft feathers or high frames. It is a simple pallet. This is your specific micro-history detail for the night. A pallet is a mattress made of a very strong, coarse fabric sack stuffed tight with dried straw or fragrant hay. You reach down and pat the pallet. It makes a dry, rustling crunch. Every few months, you empty the old, crushed straw and fill it with fresh stalks from the harvest. The straw holds the air inside, which helps to keep the heat of your body from escaping into the cold floor. It is firm but springy, and it smells of the high summer fields. You sit on the edge, and the straw shifts beneath you, settling into the shape of your body. Beside the pallet, folded neatly, are your blankets. In the Middle Ages, these are your most prized possessions. They are made of wadmal, a type of very thick, heavy woolen cloth. To make wadmal, the wool is woven and then fulled, which means it is soaked in water and beaten until the fibers lock together. This makes the cloth so thick that it is almost like felt. It is very heavy, and it is very, very warm. Here is a simple historical fact about your blankets. They are full of a natural oil called lanolin. Because the wool was not washed with harsh soaps, the oil from the sheep stays in the fabric. This oil does something wonderful. It makes the blankets water repellent and helps them hold on to heat even better than clean wool. When you touch the blankets, they feel a little bit waxy and heavy. But that weight is what keeps the freezing night air at bay. A single woolen blanket like this can weigh as much as a small child. You pull the first blanket over your legs. The weight is immediate and soothing. It feels like a firm hand pressing down on you, telling you it is okay to rest. You pull the second blanket up to your chest. You are wearing your long linen chemise and your woolen hose, as people do not sleep in thin pajamas in the hunger gap. You sleep in layers, becoming a part of the bed itself. You tuck the edges of the blankets under your sides, creating a tight cocoon of wool and straw. Now, Take a long moment of reflection. Lie perfectly still as the blankets begin to trap your body heat. Do not move. Do not think about the work of tomorrow. Just feel the weight on your chest. In this silence, you can hear your own slow breathing. You can hear the fire's last few pops as the peat settles. The room is almost completely dark now, except for the red eye of the hearth. You feel a deep, heavy sense of safety. The blankets are a wall between you and the winter. In this moment, the hunger gap cannot reach you. You are a small, warm spark in a cold, dark house, and you are perfectly content. The straw in the pallet gives a little crackle as you shift your head. You have a small pillow stuffed with wool scraps and dried lavender. As your head sinks into it, the scent of the flowers is released. It is a soft, purple smell that reminds you of the bees in the garden. It helps to settle your mind. You look up at the dark rafters one last time. You know that the smoke is still hanging there, a thin layer of protection against the cold that wants to drop down from the roof. In the Middle Ages, the night shift of sleeping is often divided into two parts. You might sleep for 4 or 5 hours, then wake up for a little while to check the fire or say a prayer, and then sleep again until the sun comes up. This is called segmented sleep. But tonight, with the heavy weight of the wadmal blankets and the warmth of the pottage in your belly, you feel like you could sleep for 100 years. Your muscles, which have been tight and shivering for much of the day, finally let go. You feel the cold air touching the tip of your nose, the only part of you that is not under the blankets. It is a sharp contrast to the toasted warmth of your body. It reminds you of how hard the winter is working outside. The wind hits the wall of the cottage, but the sound is muffled by the thick wool over your ears. You are tucked away, hidden from the frost and the ice. You are the watchman of your own rest. You close your eyes, and the red glow of the fire disappears. All that is left is the feeling of the heavy wool, the smell of the lavender, and the soft rustle of the straw. You are safe. You are warm. The work of the night is done, and the blankets have taken over the watch. You let yourself sink deeper into the pallet, drifting away into a sleep that is as deep and silent as the snow in the garden. The winter is long, but tonight you have won the battle for warmth. The sun has not yet pulled itself over the edge of the world, but the room is turning a very pale, dusty blue. You push back the heavy wadmal blankets. The air in the cottage is much colder now that the fire has slept under its bed of ash. You move quickly, pulling on your thickest woolen tunic and wrapping a piece of rough cloth around your neck. Today, you must leave the safety of the village. You must go to the forest. Your woodpile is getting low, and while the peat is good for a steady glow, you need the sharp heat of branches to keep the dampness from the walls. You step outside, and the world is a giant, frozen diamond. The snow from the night before has formed a hard crust that snaps like thin sugar under your boots. You carry a long piece of hemp rope coiled over your shoulder and a small iron axe tucked into your belt. The air is so cold it makes your teeth ache, but you walk with purpose. You are heading toward the common woods. Here is a simple historical fact. As a peasant, you have the right of estover. This is an old law that says you can go into the Lord's forest to gather wood, but only by hook or by crook. This means you cannot cut down a living tree, but you can take any branch that you can reach with a shepherd's hook or any dead wood that has already fallen to the ground. You enter the forest, and the light changes. It is darker here, and the sound of the wind is replaced by the soft thump of snow falling from high pine branches. The trees look like giant white ghosts standing perfectly still. You move between the trunks of the oak and the beech trees, looking for the deadfall. These are the branches that the heavy ice of December has snapped and brought down to the forest floor. You find a large limb of ash wood sticking out of a snowdrift. Ash is the king of winter woods because it burns brightly even when it is still a little bit green or damp. You reach for a specific micro-history tool, your bill hook. This is a heavy iron blade with a curved end, like a large bird's beak. It is much better than a straight axe for clearing small, frozen twigs. You use it to trim the smaller side branches off the ash limb. The sound of the iron hitting the frozen wood is a sharp clink-clink, echoing through the silent trees. It is a lonely sound, but it makes you feel strong. You are taking what the forest has given up. You work slowly, being careful not to sweat too much. In the hunger gap, if your clothes get wet with sweat and then freeze, the cold will catch you very quickly. You gather the trimmed branches into a neat pile on the snow. You use your hemp rope to tie them together in a faggot. That is just the word for a bundle of sticks tied up for the fire. You make the bundle large, but not so heavy that you cannot carry it on your back. As you pull the rope tight, the dry bark crumbles and falls away, smelling of deep earth and old rain. It is a clean, sharp smell that wakes up your nose. Now, take a long moment of reflection. Stand perfectly still in the middle of the frozen forest. Do not move. Do not make a sound. Just listen to the heart of the woods. You can hear the crack of a frozen branch far away, sounding like a hunter's bow. You can hear the tiny, papery rustle of a dry leaf clinging to an oak tree. In this silence, you realize that the forest is not dead. It is just waiting. You feel like a tiny speck in the middle of a great, ancient power. The trees have seen 100 winters like this one, and they will see 100 more. You feel a deep sense of respect for the wood. It gives you heat, it gives you tools, and it gives you life. You hoist the bundle onto your back. The rope bites into your shoulders through the wool of your cloak, but the weight feels good. It is the weight of security. You begin the walk back toward the village, your breath coming in big, white puffs like a steam engine. The sun is finally showing its face, a pale yellow coin hanging low in the sky, but it gives no warmth yet. You look at your tracks in the snow, a long line of footprints leading back to your door. You are the watchman of the woodpile, and today, the fire will be bright. As you reach your cottage, you drop the bundle near the door with a satisfying thud. You take a moment to look at the wood. Each branch is a promise of another hour of light, another pot of pottage made hot, and another night of safety. You feel a sense of pride in your work. You have gone out into the cold and brought back the sun's energy, trapped in the grain of the ashwood. You turn the wooden latch and step back into the dim warmth of your home, ready to turn the forest's gift into the hearth's glow. You move away from the heavy door, the weight of the wood bundle still a ghost feeling on your shoulders. The room is dim, the pale winter sun struggling to get through the thick thatch and the small shuttered gaps. You reach for a small object on the trestle table. It is a candle, but it is not the white, waxen pillar you might imagine. This is a tallow candle. This is your specific micro-history detail for the afternoon. Tallow is made from the fat of cows or sheep. You saved it back in the autumn when the last of the livestock was prepared for winter. The fat was melted down, cleaned, and poured into a mold around a wick made of twisted hemp. You lean over the hearth and find a small, glowing coal. You use a thin splinter of wood to catch the spark and then touch it to the wick. A tiny, blue flame dances for a moment before turning into a steady, yellow glow. The smell of the tallow hits you immediately. It is not sweet like beeswax. It is a heavy, kitchen smell, like roasted meat or old butter. To anyone else, it might seem strange, but to you, it is the smell of comfort. It means you have successfully saved the fat of the land to light the dark of the winter. The candle does not give off a lot of light. It creates a small circle of gold on the wooden table, leaving the rest of the room in deep, velvet shadows. You sit down on your stool and watch the flame. In the Middle Ages, light is very expensive. You do not burn a candle just to see. You burn it for a purpose, perhaps to sew a tear in your tunic, or to check the edge of your knife. Every inch of that tallow is a resource that must be rationed. You are the watchman of the wick, making sure not a drop of the fat is wasted. Here is a simple historical fact about your light. Because tallow is made of animal fat, it is actually a kind of food. In very desperate times, during the worst years of the hunger gap, people have been known to eat their candles to stay alive. You look at the dripping fat and feel a strange sense of security. Even your light is a form of fuel for the body if things truly become dire. But for now, it serves its main purpose, to push back the gloom. You pick up a small piece of wood and begin to whittle. The knife moves smoothly through the soft pine, and the curls of wood fall onto the table like dried flower petals. The candlelight catches the edge of the blade, making it look like a silver fish rumping in a dart pond. You are making a new peg for the wall. It is quiet work, the kind of work that fills the long hours when the world outside is frozen solid. Now, take a long moment of reflection. Put down your knife and just watch the candle. Do not move. Do not speak. Watch how the flame leans to one side, pulled by a tiny, invisible draft. Watch the melted fat pool at the top, clear and hot, before it runs down the side and turns back into hard, white ripples. In this silence, the small flame feels like a living person in the room with you. It is a tiny, brave thing, fighting against the massive weight of the winter night. You feel a deep connection to this little light. It is small, and it is humble, but it is enough to show you the way. The tallow candle flickers, casting your shadow against the whitewashed wall. Your shadow looks like a giant, moving with every breath you take. You notice how the light makes the rough grain of the table look like a landscape of mountains and valleys. In the dimness, your other senses wake up. You can hear the fire more clearly, the pop of the ash wood you brought in earlier. You can feel the texture of the linen on your sleeves. You think about the night shift of the village. All across the valley, in every small cottage, there is likely a single candle or a small rushlight burning. Each one is a tiny star held behind thick walls. You are not alone in your waiting. You are part of 1,000 small lights, all holding out for the spring. The tallow is shortening, the wick curling over as it burns. You use a small pair of iron snuffs to trim the top of the wick, keeping the flame from smoking too much. As the candle burns lower, the room seems to grow even more quiet. The heavy smell of the fat settles over you like a blanket. You feel the slow passage of time, not in minutes or hours, but in the slow disappearance of the tallow. You are learning the lesson of the hunger gap, that things move slowly, and that there is beauty in the dim, quiet corners of life. You finish your peg, smoothing the wood with your thumb. You blow out the candle to save the rest for tomorrow. The smell of the smoke lingers in the dark, a final good night from the light. You move toward the back of the cottage, where the air is coolest and the shadows are deepest. Hanging from a large iron hook in the rafters is a heavy, grey bundle wrapped in layers of coarse linen. This is your treasure. You reach up and unwrap the cloth, revealing a side of salted pork. In the Middle Ages, this is called bacon, but it is not the thin strips you might see today. It is a thick, solid slab of meat, fat, and skin, preserved in a heavy crust of salt. Back in the late autumn, when the acorns were falling from the trees and the pigs had grown fat, the village held the slaughter. It was a busy, bloody time, but it was necessary. You could not afford to feed all the animals through the winter, so most were prepared for the larder. You spent days rubbing this meat with coarse sea salt, layering it in a wooden tub until the salt drew out all the moisture. Now it is hard and dry, but it is safe from rot. Here is a simple historical fact. Salt was so expensive that it was often called white gold. Using enough of it to save a whole pig was a massive investment in your family's future. You take your sharp iron knife and begin to cut a very thin slice. The meat is a deep, dark red, and the fat is a creamy, solid white. It is so hard that the knife makes a creak as it passes through the grain. You are not making a big meal of this. In the hunger gap, meat is a kitchen fee, a little extra bit of fat and salt to make the plain grain pottage taste like a feast. You only need a piece as big as your thumb to change the whole pot. You reach for a specific micro-history detail. The salt box. This is a small wooden container with a sloping lid that hangs right next to the fire. Even though the meat is already salted, the salt box is where you keep the loose grains for seasoning. You take a tiny pinch of the grey, crunchy salt and press it onto the slice of pork. The salt grains look like tiny pieces of glass in the firelight. You pop the small piece of meat into your mouth. At first, it is like chewing on a piece of leather. It is cold and very, very salty. But as the warmth of your mouth softens the fat, the flavor begins to explode. It tastes of the oak woods where the pig once ran. It tastes of the sea from the salt, and the deep, sweet tang of the meat itself. It is a powerful, rich taste that makes your mouth water. You chew slowly, making the tiny morsel last as long as possible. In this moment, you feel a burst of energy. Your body knows that this is the fuel it needs to stay strong against the frost. Now, take a long moment of reflection. Stand there in the dim light of the back of the house. Do not move. Do not speak. Just experience the taste. The house is silent, save for the faint drip of melting snow somewhere near the eaves. In this silence, the flavor of the pork feels like a bright light in a dark room. You think about the cycle of the year, the pig, the salt, the autumn work, and now, this one bite of survival. You feel a deep sense of connection to the animal that gave its life so you could see the spring. You feel a quiet, heavy gratitude for the food in your hands. You wrap the linen back around the bacon, tying it tight with a piece of twine. You must be the watchman of the meat. If the damp gets into the cloth, the meat will spoil. If the mice find a way up the hook, it will be lost. You check the knot twice before stepping back toward the warmth of the hearth. You carry the single slice of pork with you, ready to drop it into the simmering pot for tomorrow's breakfast. The hunger gap is a time of intense focus. You notice the way the light catches the grease on your fingertips. You rub them together, feeling the slickness of the fat. Even this bit of oil is precious. You won't wash it off. You'll rub it into the leather of your knife sheath to keep the metal from rusting. Everything has a use. Everything is part of the plan. You sit back on your stool, the taste of the salt still lingering on your tongue, feeling a deep, solid sense of satisfaction. You have the grain, you have the wood, and you have the meat. The winter is still outside, but you are winning. The sun has moved across the pale sky and is beginning to sink, leaving the village in a soft, lavender light. You walk back to the heavy oak door. You do not open it wide, for that would let the precious warmth of the peat fire escape into the night. Instead, you push it open, just a few inches, enough to put your face into the gap. The air that hits you is so cold it feels like a physical weight, pressing against your skin, but it is also clean and fresh, washing away the smell of the tallow and the wood smoke for a brief moment. You look out at the world, and you see that the sky has turned a heavy, dark grey, like the colour of an old iron kettle. And then it begins. The snow starts to fall. It does not come with a roar or a scream of wind. It is perfectly silent. In the Middle Ages, people call this the White Death when it is a storm, but tonight it is gentle. The flakes are large and soft, looking like white feathers falling from the wings of a giant bird. They drift down slowly, turning and spinning in the still air, before settling on the hard, frozen ground. Here is a simple historical fact for you. In your time, the snow is your clock and your calendar. When the snow falls like this, the night shift of the village changes. All work outside must stop. You cannot plough the frozen earth. You cannot gather more wood, and you cannot travel to the next village. The snow locks everyone into their own small world. It is a time for staying still. It is a time for stories and for resting the body after the hard work of the harvest. The snow is a wall that keeps the rest of the world away, making your cottage feel like the very center of the universe. You watch as a single snowflake lands on the rough sleeve of your woolen tunic. You look at it closely. It is a tiny, perfect star with 6 points, more beautiful than any piece of jewelry by the lord of the manor. For a few seconds, it stays there, white and bright against the dark brown wool. Then, the warmth of your arm through the cloth reaches it. The star begins to shrink. It loses its points and turns into a tiny, clear bead of water before disappearing into the fibers of the wool. It is a small reminder of how quickly things change in the winter. You reach out and touch the specific micro-history detail of your doorway, the door sill. This is a thick piece of seasoned elm wood that sits at the bottom of the frame. It is raised up high, about 4 inches off the ground. This is very important. It keeps the melting snow and the mud from flowing into your house. It also acts as a dam to hold in the thick layer of rushes and straw on your floor. You can see the new snow already piling up against the outside of the sill, a white line that grows higher with every minute that passes. Now, take a long moment of reflection. Stay there, with your hand on the cold wood and the snow falling just inches from your nose. Do not move. Do not speak. Just listen to the silence of the snowfall. It is a deep, heavy sound, or rather, a lack of sound. The snow acts like a blanket, soaking up every noise. You cannot hear the distant dogs barking or the sound of the stream. The world is being hushed, layer by layer. In this silence, you feel a deep sense of peace. You realize that you don't have to be anywhere else. You don't have to do anything else. Your only job is to be here, in this moment, and to keep the fire burning. You feel safe, protected by the very snow that makes the world so cold. You pull your head back inside and push the door shut. You drop the wooden bar into its iron cradles with a solid thump. The world of white and grey is gone, replaced by the orange and red of your home. The transition makes your skin tingle. You walk back to the hearth, but the image of the falling snow stays in your mind. It is beautiful, but you know it is also a warning. The hunger gap is getting deeper. Every inch of snow on the roof makes it harder for the sun to warm the earth. Every day the paths are hidden is a day you must rely only on what is inside your wooden hutch. You pick up a small broom made of bundled birch twigs. You use it to sweep back a few stray flakes of snow that blew in when the door was open. They hiss as they hit the warm stones near the fire, turning into tiny puffs of steam. You watch them go, thinking about the cycle of the water, from the sky to the ground to your hearth, and then back up into the rafters as smoke and steam. You are a part of that cycle. Just another living thing waiting for the turn of the year. The night shift of the snow is a quiet watch. While you sleep, the snow will continue to fall, soft and relentless. It will cover the woodpile, the garden, and the churchyard. It will make the world look new and clean in the morning. You sit back on your stool, feeling the warmth of the pottage still in your belly and the glow of the fire on your face. You are the watchman of the door, and you have closed it tight. The snow is falling, the world is sleeping, and you are exactly where you need to be. You walk to the corner of the room where the heavy iron pot sits on the stone hearth. It is the end of the day, and the pottage has been eaten. The pot is now empty, except for a few crusty bits of dried peas and grain stuck to the bottom. In the Middle Ages, you do not have a sink with running water. You do not have soap in a bottle. Cleaning your only cooking pot is a slow, cold task that must be done with care. This pot is made of cast iron, and it is very heavy. It has 3 little legs on the bottom, so it can stand right in the coals of the fire. You lift the pot by its thick iron handle. It is cold now, and the soot on the outside is dry and powdery. It gets all over your fingers, turning your skin a deep, charcoal black. You do not mind. This is the mark of the night shift. To clean the inside, you reach for a specific micro-history tool, a scouring clout. This is a piece of very rough, leftover linen cloth that has been bundled up into a tight ball. Beside it is a small wooden bucket of fine, white sand that you gathered from the riverbank last summer. Here is a simple historical fact. Sand is your soap. Because it is gritty and sharp, it acts like 1,000 tiny knives that scrape away the burnt food. You pour a little bit of cold water into the pot, just enough to wet the bottom, and then you throw in a handful of the sand. You begin to scrub. You move your hand in a circular motion, pushing the sand into the corners of the pot. You can hear the shush-shush sound of the grit rubbing against the iron. It is a rhythmic, honest sound. It takes a long time, and your arm begins to ache, but you do not stop. You want the iron to be smooth and clean for tomorrow's meal. As you scrub, the water in the pot turns a murky, grey color. You tip the dirty water out into a small wooden tub. You will use this water later to feed the pigs or to pour on the compost heap in the garden. Nothing is ever wasted. You take a clean piece of wool and wipe the inside of the pot until it shines like dark silk in the firelight. You check the edges and the legs, making sure no bits of food are left to go sour. A clean pot means a healthy family. In the hunger gap, you cannot afford to get sick from bad food. Now, take a long moment of reflection. Hold the heavy pot in both hands and just look into the dark circle of the iron. Do not move. Do not speak. Just feel the weight of the object. This pot has fed your father and your grandfather. It has sat in the fire for 100 years, and it will sit there for 100 more. In this silence, you feel the strength of the iron. It is solid and unchanging, unlike the snow that melts or the wood that burns away. You feel a deep sense of connection to the people who held this pot before you. You are the watchman of the hearth, and this pot is your shield against the hunger. You set the pot back on the hard stone, but you do not put it directly into the fire yet. You take a small piece of animal fat and rub it over the inside of the iron. This is called seasoning. The fat creates a thin, slippery layer that keeps the iron from rusting in the damp winter air. It also makes the food taste better. You can smell the salty scent of the fat as it hits the warm iron. It is a good, clean smell. The room is very quiet now. The snow is still falling outside, and the fire has settled into a gentle glow. You look at your black hands. You walk to the bucket of water and wash them, watching the grey soot swirl in the water. Your skin feels tingly and cold, but as you dry them on your tunic, the warmth of the room returns. You have done the hard, messy work of the evening. The pot is ready. The hearth is clean. You think about the night shift of the kitchen. While the world sleeps, the iron pot stays here, waiting. It is a simple thing, but it is the most important tool you own. Without it, you could not turn the hard grain and the dried peas into the soft, warm pottage that keeps you alive. You feel a sense of satisfaction. You are taking care of your things, and in return, they are taking care of you. You sit back on your stool, your arms feeling heavy and tired, and you watch the firelight dance on the polished surface of your clean iron pot. You are sitting very still by the dying fire, the clean iron pot resting at your feet. The room is so quiet that you can hear the tiny tink of a cooling ember, and then, through the thick wattle-and-daub walls and the heavy layers of snow, a new sound reaches you. It is low, deep, and very slow. Bong, bong, bong. It is the sound of the great bell in the church tower, at the center of the village. The sound is muffled by the winter air, making it feel as if it is coming from deep underground or from very far away. In the Middle Ages, the church bell is the voice of the village. It tells you when to wake up, when to pray, and when the day is over. But tonight, this is the curfew bell. The word curfew comes from the French words couvre-feu, which simply means cover the fire. This leads us to a simple historical fact. The curfew is a safety rule, because most houses are made of wood and straw. A fire that gets out of control in the middle of the night could burn the whole village down in minutes. When the bell rings, it is a signal for everyone to bank their hearths and get ready for sleep. You reach for a specific micro-history tool that sits near the hearth, the curfew. This is a large, dome-shaped cover made of polished brass or dark iron. It has small holes around the bottom and a sturdy handle on top. You use your iron shovel to push the glowing peat embers into a neat pile at the center of the hearthstone. Then, you lift the heavy metal dome and place it right over the fire. The curfew does not put the fire out. Instead, it hides the flames and limits the air. The small holes allow just enough air inside, so the fire stays alive as a bed of hot, red coals, but it cannot spark or spread. Under the dome, the fire is safe. It will stay warm all through the frozen night, waiting for you to wake it up in the morning. This tool is your guardian against the night shift of fire. It lets you sleep without worrying, knowing that the heart of your home is tucked away in a metal cage. Now, take a long moment of reflection. Stand there with your hands still near the warm metal of the curfew. Do not move. Do not speak. Just listen as the last echo of the church bell fades into the snow. In this silence, the village feels completely unified. You know that at this exact moment, in every cottage along the path, your neighbors are doing the exact same thing. They are covering their fires and pulling their blankets tight. You are all part of one big heartbeat, all following the same rhythm of the winter. You feel a deep sense of belonging. You are not just a person alone in the dark. You are a part of a village that is waiting together for the spring. The room grows much darker once the fire is covered. The only light comes from a tiny red glow peeking through the holes in the curfew, looking like a handful of fallen stars. You move slowly toward your pallet, guided by the memory of the room's shape. You can feel the cold of the floor through your woolen hose, but the warmth of the day's work is still in your muscles. The sound of the bell stays in your head, a steady, calm pulse that makes the hunger gap feel a little less scary. You think about the bell ringer. You imagine him up in the cold stone tower, pulling the heavy hemp rope while the snow blows through the open windows. He's doing his job so that you can do yours, the job of resting and saving your strength. You feel a quiet gratitude for the rules of the village. The curfew bell is not a command to be feared. It is a promise of safety. It means the day is truly finished. You sit on your straw mattress and listen. The wind has died down, and the snow is still falling, making the world outside perfectly silent. Inside, the only sound is the soft, metallic tick of the curfew dome as it settles over the heat. You feel the weight of the night pressing in, but it is a soft weight. You are tucked away, the fire is covered, and the watch is nearly over for today. You lean back into the lavender-scented pillow, letting the rhythm of the church bell guide your mind toward a deep, heavy sleep. You lie back on your straw pallet, the heavy wool blankets pulled up to your chin. The room is almost entirely dark now that the curfew dome has been placed over the fire. Your eyes are closed, but your mind is still wide awake. drifting away from the frozen village and the biting cold of the hunger gap. As you settle into the soft, rustling hay of your mattress, you begin to imagine a different world. You are dreaming of the green spring. In your mind, the white blanket of snow beginning to pull back, like a heavy curtain being opened on a bright stage. In this dream, you can feel the sun on the back of your neck. It is not the pale, weak sun of January, but the strong, golden sun of April. It feels like a warm hand pressing against your skin, melting the last of the winter's chill from your bones. You can hear the sound of water everywhere. The frozen stream has broken its icy chains, and the water is rushing over the stones with a happy, gurgling sound. The mud of the path is no longer hard like iron. It is soft and dark, smelling of deep earth and new life. Here is a simple historical fact about your dreams of spring. In the Middle Ages, spring is not just a season. It is a miracle. It is called Lentantide. It is the time when the world is reborn, and the fear of the hunger gap finally begins to fade. You dream of the first green shoots of the leek garden poking through the soil. These tiny, pale green lines are the first sign that you have won the battle against the winter. They are a promise that fresh food is coming back to your table. You see a specific micro-history detail in your dream. The cuckoo flower. This is a small, delicate plant with pale pink or lilac petals that grows in the damp meadows. It is called the cuckoo flower because it always appears at the same time the cuckoo bird returns to the woods. In your dream, you see a whole field of these flowers, nodding their heads in the warm breeze. The sight of them makes your heart feel light, as if a great weight has been lifted. You can almost smell their faint, sweet scent mixing with the smell of the fresh grass. Now, take a long moment of reflection. Stay perfectly still in the darkness of your cottage, but let your mind stay in that green field. Do not move. Do not think about the snow outside. Just feel the breeze of the dream. In this silence, you can almost hear the hum of the first bees waking up from their winter sleep. You can feel the soft texture of the new clover under your bare feet. In this moment, the hunger of the winter feels like a distant memory. You realize that the spring is not just something that happens to the world. It is something that happens inside you. You feel a deep sense of hope. You imagine the work of the spring. You see yourself out in the fields, the heavy wooden plow turning over the rich, black soil. The work is hard, but your body feels strong and full of energy. You see the birds following the plow, looking for worms in the fresh earth. You see the willow trees by the river turning a bright, fuzzy yellow as the new buds open. Everything is moving, everything is growing, and everything is full of color. The gray and white of the winter are gone, replaced by every shade of green you can imagine. In your dream, you are no longer the watchman of the rationed grain. You are the sower of the seeds. You see yourself walking across the field, a linen bag of barley slung over your shoulder. Your hand moves in a steady, rhythmic swing, scattering the golden seeds across the dark earth. It is a dance of life. Each seed that hits the ground is a victory over the hunger gap. You feel a deep, solid joy as you watch the seeds disappear into the soil, knowing that the earth will keep them safe until they are ready to wake up. The dream shifts, and you are sitting outside your cottage on a warm evening. The door is wide open, and the sweet air of the garden is filling the house. You are eating a bowl of fresh greens, wild mustard, and young nettles cooked with a little bit of butter. The taste is sharp and bright, the taste of life itself. You are not worried about the bottom of the food chest. You are not worried about the woodpile. The world is full of plenty, and the sun stays up late into the evening. You feel a soft smile on your face as you drift deeper into sleep. The dream of the spring is your secret weapon. It is what keeps you going when the wind howls and the snow piles up against the door. It is the memory of what was and the promise of what will be. You are the guardian of this hope, holding it close to your heart in the middle of the frozen night. The spring is coming, and though it is still many weeks away, in your mind, it has already arrived. You let the green light of the dream wrap around you, carrying you away into a peaceful, warm sleep. You wake for a brief moment in the middle of the night. The room is silent, and the air is so cold it makes the bridge of your nose feel like ice. You do not get out from under your heavy waddle blankets, but you reach out one hand to touch a small leather bag that you have kept tucked right beside your pallet, where the heat of your body can almost reach it. This is your seed bag. Inside are the dried seeds of the leeks, the onions, and the hardy beans you will plant when the snow finally pulls back. In the Middle Ages, guarding these seeds is the most important night shift of all. If the damp gets to them, they will rot. If the frost gets too deep into them, they will never wake up. Most importantly, you must keep them away from the hungry mouse, the mice that live in the thatch. A mouse doesn't see a future garden when it looks at these seeds. It only sees a midnight snack. By keeping them right here, near your head, you can hear even the tiniest rustle of a mouse near your bed. You are the living shield for the next year's harvest. Here is a simple historical fact. Seeds are your family's inheritance. These are not seeds you bought from a shop. These are the children of the plants your father and grandfather grew. Over many years, these specific seeds have learned how to grow in the soil of your village. They know how to survive the local rains and the local bugs. If you lose these seeds, you cannot simply replace them. You would be losing generations of history and a plant that is perfectly tuned to your home. You feel the small, hard lumps of the beans through the leather. You reach for a specific micro-history detail, a drying bead. This is a small, hollowed-out piece of bone or a very dry seashell that you have tucked inside the seed bag. It helps to pull any tiny bits of moisture away from the seeds, acting like a small sponge to keep the air inside the leather perfectly dry. You shake the bag gently, and it makes a soft, rattling sound, like the sound of dry rain. It is a lucky sound. It means the seeds are still hard and healthy. Now, take a long moment of reflection. Hold the bag of seeds against your chest, over your heart. Do not move. Do not speak. Just feel the potential life inside the leather. In this freezing darkness, you are holding the entire summer in your hand. Thousands of green leaves, hundreds of white flowers, and enough food to fill your hutch again are all trapped in these tiny, cold spakes. In this silence, you feel a deep sense of responsibility. You are the bridge between the past harvest and the future one. Without your watch, the cycle breaks. You feel a quiet, heavy strength. You are the protector of the life that is yet to come. You think about the hidden life all around you, under the snow in the garden, and here in your bed. Everything is waiting. The seeds are like tiny hearts that have stopped beating for a while, just waiting for the warmth of the sun to start them again. You tuck the bag back under the edge of your pillow. You can smell the faint, peppery scent of the dried bean pods through the leather. It is a dry, dusty smell that promises a green future. The room is perfectly still. The night shift of the seeds is a silent one. They don't need to be fed or watered yet. They just need to be kept safe and dry. You are their watchman, and your own body heat is the wall that protects them. You feel a sense of peace knowing they are right there, within reach of your hand. If the house were to catch fire or the walls were to fail, this bag would be the first thing you would grab. It is more precious than your boots or your iron pot. You close your eyes again, the rattle of the seeds still echoing in your mind. You imagine the beans climbing up the tall wooden poles in the garden, their green vines twisting toward the sun. You imagine the white flowers turning into long, heavy pods. You see yourself picking them in the heat of August, your hands stained green by the leaves. All of that is waiting inside the small leather bag. You let the thought of the growing garden lull you back into sleep. You have checked the treasure, and it is safe. The hunger gap may be outside, but the future is tucked under your pillow, warm and waiting. You pull yourself from the warm cocoon of your blankets. The air in the room is at its coldest point, just before the dawn. You can see the pale, grey light of the morning ghosting through the cracks in the shutters. You don't start the fire yet. First, you must check on the other lives that share your home. You pull on your heavy boots, the leather still soft from the fat you rubbed into them, and pick up your lanthorn. You don't light it. You know the way by heart. You walk to the back of the cottage and push open a heavy internal door made of rough-cut pine. You step into the byre. In the Middle Ages, many cottages are built as long houses. This means the people live at one end and the animals live at the other, under the same roof. As you step over the threshold, the air changes. It is warmer here than in the main room, and it smells thick and heavy. It is the smell of dry hay, old manure, and the sweet, musky breath of living creatures. This heat is a gift. The bodies of the animals act like a giant, furry stove, helping to keep the whole house from freezing solid. In the shadows, you hear a soft, rhythmic crunch-crunch sound. You move closer to the wooden stalls. Here, you find your most precious animal, a small, red-brown cow. She's standing perfectly still, her head lowered over a pile of dry straw. Her big, dark eyes catch the dim light, looking like polished stones. Here is a simple historical fact. For a peasant family, a cow is a living bank account. She provides milk, which you turn into hard cheese and butter to store for the winter. In the hunger gap, a cup of warm milk can be the difference between a child staying healthy or falling ill. You reach out and lay your hand on her flank. Her hide is thick and coarse, and you can feel the heat radiating from her body. Under your palm, you feel the slow, steady thump-thump of her heart. You feel a specific micro-history detail, the currycomb. This is a flat tool made of iron with rows of small, blunt teeth. You pick it up from a ledge and begin to run it over her back. It clears away the dust and the bits of straw from her coat. She gives a low, vibrating hum of a moo, a sound of contentment that vibrates through the floor and into your boots. Now, take a long moment of reflection. Lean your forehead against the cow's warm side and just breathe. Do not move. Do not speak. Just listen to the sounds of the barn. You can hear the soft rustle of the few hens perched on a beam above, their feathers fluffed up to stay warm. You can hear the steady chewing of the cow. In this silence, the barn feels like a holy place. It is full of life that is quiet and patient. You realize how much you rely on these animals, and how much they rely on you. You are their protector, the one who brings the hay and the water, and in return, they give you their warmth and their milk. You feel a deep, heavy sense of peace. You check the manger, the wooden box where the food goes. It is nearly empty. You reach for a bundle of fodder. This is the name for the dried grass and leafy twigs you gathered back in the autumn. You drop a fresh armful of hay into the manger. The smell of the dried clover and meadow grass fills the air, a sweet memory of the summer fields. The cow begins to eat immediately, her long tongue pulling the stalks into her mouth. You look at the walls of the byre. They are made of the same thick mud and straw as the rest of the house, but here they are stained with the dampness of the animal's breath. You check the floor, making sure the drainage channel is clear. Keeping the animals clean is part of your night shift work. If they get sick, the family's future goes dark. You move with a slow, quiet energy, not wanting to startle the sleeping birds or the resting cow. Everything in the barn is about saving energy, about moving as little as possible until the green grass returns. You think about the night shift of the animals. They don't have clocks or calendars. They don't know about the hunger gap or the rationed grain in the hutch. They only know the feeling of the hay in their mouths and the warmth of the barn. Their patience is a lesson to you. If they can wait for the spring, so can you. You give the cow one last pat on her neck. Her skin is warm and solid, a reminder that life is strong, even in the heart of winter. You step back into the living part of the house and pull the door shut. The silence of the cottage feels different now. It feels less lonely because you know the life that is breathing just on the other side of that wall. You are the watchman of the byre, and the animals are safe. You walk back toward the hearth, ready to wake up the fire and start the final days of the long wait. The dawn is coming, and the house is full of the quiet strength of things that know how to survive. You stand before the hearth, your knees stiff from the cold of the morning. The room is still grey, but you can feel the world waking up. The curfew dome, the metal cover you placed over the fire last night, is cool to the touch on the outside, but you can feel a faint hum of heat coming from within. This is the most important moment of the day. You reach out and grip the heavy iron handle. With a steady pull, you lift the dome away. A small cloud of grey ash floats up, and there, sitting in the center of the hearthstone, are the embers. The embers are a deep, pulsing red. They look like the eyes of a small animal watching you from the dark. They are the survivors of the night. In the Middle Ages, starting a fire from nothing is a long and difficult job involving flint, steel, and a lot of luck. It is much better to keep the old fire breathing under the ash. You are the watchman of the ember, the person who ensures that the light of yesterday becomes the warmth of today. If this red glow disappears, the house will grow cold, and the hunger gap will feel even wider. You reach for a small basket of tinder. This is your specific micro-history detail for the morning. Tinder is the name for anything that catches fire very easily. Your basket is full of dried bits of moss, thin shavings of birch bark, and small, dry twigs. You take a handful of the soft moss and place it right on top of the glowing embers. You lean down, getting your face close to the ash. You take a deep breath and blow. Very gently, whoosh, the red embers turn a bright, angry orange. A tiny thread of white smoke curls up from the moss. You blow again, a little stronger this time. Suddenly, a small, yellow flame licks the air. Here is a simple historical fact about your hearth. In your time, the fire is more than just a tool. It is a legal mark of your home. If a house has a living hearth, it is a place where a family belongs. Some people believe that if the fire goes out completely, the luck of the house goes with it. By keeping this small flame burning, you are keeping the spirit of your family alive. You are telling the winter that you are still here, still warm, and still fighting. You begin to build the fire. You add the thin twigs first, laying them in a shape like a small tent. The flames climb up the wood, crackling and popping as they eat the dry bark. The room begins to brighten, the orange light dancing on the whitewashed walls. You reach for one of the logs you brought back from the forest, the heavy ashwood. You place it carefully across the back of the fire. Ashwood is special because it doesn't need to be perfectly dry to burn well. It is a kind wood that gives off a steady, cheerful heat without too much jumping smoke. Now, take a long moment of reflection. Sit back on your heels and just watch the fire grow. Do not move. Do not speak. Just listen to the voice of the hearth. You can hear the snap of the twigs and the low hiss of the sap in the larger log. The heat begins to touch your face, melting the frost of the night from your skin. In this silence, you feel a deep sense of accomplishment. You have successfully brought the fire through the dark hours. You have bridged the gap between the night and the day. You feel a warm, solid sense of peace. The hearth is the heart of the cottage, and as long as it beats, you are safe. The smoke rises in a straight line toward the rafters. You notice how the light makes the soot on the beams look like black velvet. You reach for the iron trammel and hang the pot of water over the new flames. Soon, the water will be hot enough for your morning meal. You look at your hands, which are dusty with white ash. You rub them together, and the ash falls away like snow. You feel the strength returning to your fingers as they warm up. You think about the night shift of the logs. Each piece of wood you put on the fire is a choice. You have to decide which logs to burn now and which to save for the freezing nights of February. You are the manager of the heat. You look at your small pile of wood near the wall and do a quick count. You have enough, as long as you continue to be clever. You move the fire dogs the iron stands to make sure the air can get under the new log. The fire is now a strong, steady blaze. It fills the room with a golden light that makes the shadows of the chairs and the table look long and friendly. The hunger gap is still outside, and the snow is still deep, but in here, the fire is winning. You sit on your stool, feeling the warmth soaking into your legs. You have done your duty as the guardian of the flame. The day has begun, and the hearth is burning bright. You are ready for whatever the winter brings next. You push the heavy wooden bar away from the door and step out onto the stone threshold. The world is blindingly white. The sun is high now, a pale, cold eye in a sky the color of a robin's egg. The snow that fell during the night has covered everything in a fresh, soft layer, but underneath it, the ground is still as hard as a whetstone. You have to go to the village well to gather water, a task that cannot wait. No matter how deep the cold, you wrap a piece of rough woolen cloth around your face, leaving only your eyes visible, and pick up two wooden buckets joined by a heavy oak yoke. The yoke sits across your shoulders, its weight familiar and grounding. As you step away from the cottage, you find the narrow path that leads to the center of the village. Walking on this path is like walking on a tightrope made of glass. This is your night shift of movement, slow, deliberate, and careful. The ice is hidden under the fresh snow, waiting to trip the person who rushes. Every step you take makes a loud, sharp crank sound, the sound of the frozen earth complaining under your weight. Here is a simple historical fact about your village paths. In the winter, the paths are not just for people. They are the shared work of the community. Every person who walks to the well or the church helps to pack the snow down, making it harder and easier to walk on over time. If a path is not used for a day, the snow becomes a wall. By walking here now, you are doing your part to keep the village open. You are a watchman of the way, making sure the lines of life between the houses do not vanish under the drifts. You see a specific micro-history detail on the edge of the path, the ice thorns. These are long, jagged icicles that have grown from the low branches of the hawthorn hedge. They are as clear as crystal and as sharp as a needle. As you pass them, your woolen cloak brushes against one, and it snaps with a sound like a tiny bell. You look at the pieces on the snow, seeing how they catch the sunlight and turn it into rainbows. It is a beautiful sight, but it is a cold beauty. It reminds you that the hunger gap is a season of sharpness. Now, take a long moment of reflection. Stand perfectly still in the middle of the icy path. Do not move. Do not speak. Just listen to the sound of the world. It is a thin, brittle sound. You can hear the distant thwack of a wood axe and the low, muffled lowing of a cow from a nearby byre. The air is so still that these sounds travel 4 miles. In this silence, you feel the great loneliness of the winter. The village feels like a collection of small islands in a frozen sea. You realize how much courage it takes just to walk to the well. You feel a deep sense of pride in your own strength. You are moving while the world is frozen. You reach the village well. It is a low circle of grey stones, now wearing a thick cap of white snow. The rope is stiff and frozen, feeling like a piece of iron in your hands. You have to break the thin layer of ice that has formed over the water inside. You drop the bucket down, hearing the loud splash echo up from the dark depths. The water is so cold, it feels like it is burning your skin as you pull it up. You fill your buckets and lift the yoke back onto your shoulders. The water sloshes slightly, and a few drops hit the snow, turning into grey ice instantly. The walk back is harder. The weight of the water pulls at your neck, and the ice on the path feels even more slippery. You move with a rhythmic, swaying walk, keeping your center of gravity low. You look at the houses as you pass. You see the frost on the windows and the thick plumes of white smoke rising from the roofs. You feel a sense of connection to everyone inside. You are all doing the same night shift of survival, each in your own way. You are the one out here in the cold, but you are carrying the water for the tea and the pottage that will keep the life going. You reach your own door, your breath coming in heavy, white gasps. Your legs are tired, and your fingers are numb, but you have done it. You have navigated the icy path and brought back the life-giving water. You set the buckets down inside the door, the wood of the buckets singing as they hit the floor. You feel a sense of triumph. The hunger gap tried to keep you trapped, but you went out and took what you needed. You sit down for a moment on your stool, letting the warmth of the fire reach your cold toes. The walk on the icy path has reminded you that the world is still there, even if it is hidden under the snow. You are the watchman of the path, and you have kept the way open. The water is in the house, the fire is burning, and you have survived another morning of the great weight. You are ready to keep going, one careful step at a time. You are standing by the edge of your garden, the tuft that has been buried under white for so long. The sun is a little higher today, and for the first time in many weeks, it doesn't just look bright. It actually feels a tiny bit warm on the dark wool of your shoulder. You notice that the snow near the stone wall of your cottage is starting to pull away. It is not a big melt, just a small thinning of the white sheet, revealing a patch of dark, wet earth that smells of deep mud and old leaves. You lean down, your knees making a soft crunch against the icy crust. You brush away a few loose flakes of snow from a sheltered corner where the wind rarely reaches, and then you see it. It is so small you almost miss it. Poking through the dark soil is a tiny, sharp point of green. It is the size of a grain of wheat and the color of a pale emerald. This is the first spring bud. It is a snowdrop. In the Middle Ages, seeing the first green shoot is like seeing a signal fire on a distant hill. It is the sign that the hunger gap has a limit. This leads us to a simple historical fact. The snowdrop is often called the fair maid of February, even though it is still cold enough to freeze your breath. This tiny plant has enough strength to push through the frozen ground. It has a special kind of anti-freeze in its leaves that keeps it from turning to ice. To you, this little green spike is more valuable than any jewel. It is the proof that the earth is waking up. You reach out, but you do not touch it. Your hand, rough and calloused from a winter of hauling wood and scrubbing iron, looks giant and clumsy next to such a delicate thing. You notice a specific micro-history detail about the plant, the spathe. This is the thin, papery leaf that wraps around the bud like a protective cloak. It looks like a tiny piece of parchment. It has kept the flower safe from the frost, just as your thick walls and waddle blankets have kept you safe in the night. Now, that cloak is opening, letting the life inside breathe the cold air. Now, take a long moment of reflection. Stay there, kneeling in the cold mud, and just stare at that tiny dot of green. Do not move. Do not speak. Just look at the contrast between the dead, white snow and the living, vibrant plant. In this silence, you feel a massive shift in your heart. The heavy, grey weight of the winter, the constant worrying about the grain bags and the woodpile starts to lift. You realize that you have made it. The night shift of the year is coming to an end. You feel a deep, pulsing sense of joy. It is a quiet joy, as soft as the snow, but it is as strong as the oak trees. You look around the garden with new eyes. You see the hazel bushes near the hedge. They are still bare, but the lansdowns, the long, yellow catkins are starting to hang a bit looser, ready to dance in the wind. You see a blackbird landing on a fence post, puffing out its feathers, and let out a single, short note. It isn't a full song yet, but it is a start. The world is beginning to stretch and yawn after its long sleep. You think about the night shift of the soil that is ending. All through the dark months, the earth has been resting and preparing. Now, the work of growing is beginning again. You feel a sudden surge of energy in your own limbs. You want to reach for your spade. You want to start turning the earth. But you wait. You know that there will still be frosts and perhaps one last bite of snow. You must be patient for just a little longer. You are the watchman of the transition, the one who sees the first light of the morning before the sun is fully up. You stand up and walk back toward your door. Your boots feel lighter on the path. You look at the smoke rising from the other cottages in the village. You want to call out to your neighbors, to tell them that the green is back, but you keep the secret for a moment longer. It is a private peace. You have guarded your fire, your food, and your life, and now the earth is joining the watch. The hunger gap is not over yet. The bags in the chest are still low, and the pottage is still thin, but the fear is gone. You know now that the story ends in green, not in white. You step back inside your cottage, and the dim light feels different. It doesn't feel like a cave anymore. It feels like a waiting room. You sit by the hearth and stir the fire, not because you are shivering, but because you are celebrating. The first bud has arrived, and the spring is just over the next hill. The pale sun is climbing higher in the sky, and the light coming through the small gaps in your shutters is no longer grey, but a bright, clear gold. You stand in the center of your room and take a long, deep breath. The air still smells of peat, smoke and dried herbs, but there is something new mixed in, a scent of damp earth and moving water. You walk over to your heavy wooden food chest, the hutch that has been the guardian of your life for so many months. You put your hand on the lid, but you do not feel that old spark of whirring. You turn the key in the lock and lift the heavy oak lid. You look down at the linen bags. They are much thinner now, slumped against the bottom of the chest like tired travelers at the end of a long journey. There is only a small mound of rye left in the corner of the largest bag, and the bag of dried peas is nearly empty. In the Middle Ages, this is the very bottom of the hunger gap. Most people would look at these empty bags and feel afraid, but you do not. You know that outside, the snowdrop is blooming and the sap is rising in the trees. You have timed your rationing perfectly. You have just enough to last until the first greens are ready to pick. Here's a simple historical fact about this moment. This is the time of the Lenten moon. It is a season of fasting and waiting, but it is also a time of great hope. You have survived the night shift of the year. You have lived through the biting frost, the howling winds, and the long, dark hours when the world seemed dead. You are the watchman who stayed awake, who kept the fire burning and the food safe. You have won the battle against the winter, and your reward is the spring. You reach into the chest and pull out the very last bit of that special white flour you saved. It is only a handful, but today you will use it. You will mix it with the coarse rye to make a sun loaf, a small, round bread to celebrate the return of the light. As you sift the flour through your fingers, you feel a deep sense of peace. The work of the winter is finished. The hunger gap is closing, and the world of plenty is about to open its doors. Now, take a long moment of reflection. Stand there, by the open chest, with the golden sunlight falling across your hands. Do not move, do not speak, just feel the stillness of the room. The house is quiet, but it is a happy quiet. You can hear the drip 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 of the melting ice from the roof, a steady rhythm that sounds like a clock counting down the last seconds of the cold. In this silence, you feel a massive weight lift from your shoulders. You realize that you are strong. You have faced the hardest season, and you are still here, standing in the light. You feel a deep, warm glow of pride. You are a survivor. You walk to the door and pull it wide open. You do not need to worry about the heat escaping now. The air that rushes in is cool, but it is soft. It doesn't bite. It kisses your skin. You look out at the village, and you see your neighbors doing the same. Doors are opening all along the path. People are stepping out into the sun, blinking their eyes and smiling at the sky. You see the mud of the path glinting in the light, and you know that in just a few days, you will be out there with your spade, beginning the work of the new year. You think back on the long nights, the sound of the wind, the smell of the tallow candle, the weight of the wadmal blankets, and the red eye of the hearth. All of those things were your companions in the dark. They kept you safe, and they taught you the value of a single grain of wheat and a single block of peat. You are a different person than you were before the snow fell. You are wiser, and you are more patient. You have learned the secrets of the night shift. The sun is rising higher, and the shadows are shrinking. The world is turning from grey to green right before your eyes. You lean against the doorframe, feeling the warmth of the wood on your back. You have done your duty. You have kept the watch. The winter is over, and the morning has finally come. The room is growing very still now, and the story is gently coming to an end. You can feel the warmth of your own bed around you, a soft and safe place far away from the frozen fields of the past. The heavy work of the night is over, and there is nothing left for you to do but rest. The sounds of the medieval village, the creaking of the wood, the rustle of the straw, and the distant bell are all fading away into a soft, quiet mist. You are safe, you are warm, the long wait is finished, and the light is returning. Let your breath become slow and steady, like the rhythm of the melting snow. Your body is heavy, your mind is calm, and the world is at peace. You have done well. You have kept the watch through the darkest time, and now it is time for you to sleep. The sun is rising, the gates are opening. The watch is ended,